John's in Camden. John, what would you like to say?
Well, hi, James.
Hello,
I
John.
want to say that your question is very pertinent. Why the Britain and US always support Israel? It's because it's support.
Well, listen, John, that wasn't actually my question. Albeit you could see it. You could see it as. No, I know you could see it as the latest iteration of that question, but that wasn't actually my question because Biden in particular has been calling upon Netanyahu to wind his neck in for some time now in a way that I can't really remember seeing in the last 2 or 3 presidencies.
Yeah, but that's just talk. They're still selling them the weapons. Look,
but we're talking about talk. Don't talk over me when I'm talking over you. It makes a complete makes a mess of everything. Just focus if you can on the question that I'm asking. Okay. Why can't Cameron answer the question at all? Because he could have answered it by saying, no, yes, Israel was entirely justified in it, but he wouldn't answer it at all.
Because you don't understand. Since Britain defeated the Ottoman Empire in 1917, the European powers and then the US has ruled the Middle East. Middle Eastern people are fed up. There's 38 military bases in the Middle East.
I think you might. I can wait for a bit. I can wait for a bit for you to come back to the question that I've actually asked. But we're in 1917 at the moment, and it's 10:27. I've got the news.
It takes 1 minute. It just takes.
All right. So remember, the question is why can't Cameron either approve or condemn the attack upon the consulate in Damascus?
Because they liked that attack. They wanted that attack. They were.
So then he could approve it. Then he could say, yes, Israel was entirely justified.
Yeah, but governments don't always say their policies out loud.
So why won't he say it out loud? Why won't he say it out loud?
Because I'm trying to explain to you, it's British policy to divide and rule. Why don't you want to understand? You were asking this question also last week. Why does Britain not stop the arms sales? You know, the 7 workers were killed. They were killed by British drones and British missiles. But you will never see that on the BBC. And look at the BBC.
Well, it's not a question of never seeing it on the BBC. What you've done, and I understand why, and I respect it up to a point, you've brought too much to this question. The specifics of why.
You can't be superficial. Look,
it's not a question of being superficial. David Cameron could have said. He could have said, and I think perhaps at a previous point in history, he would have said Israel is completely within its rights to have launched that attack upon the consulate. The Iranian
revolution. Why not? It's against international law and Vienna Convention. Look, the Iranians tried since the 1st of April. They went to the United Nations. They asked the resolution to condemn the Israeli attack. US, Britain, and France opposed that, and they wouldn't even let that to be discussed in the United Nations. Iran didn't want to attack Israel. Look what happened when they killed General Soleimani.
No, you're doing it again. I do understand. I understand everything you've said already.
You said Iran is despicable. Iran is morally not correct. I'm Iranian. I'm offended. Why would you say that?
Well, the same reason you left.
No, it's not. I left during the Shah's time, so don't come to conclusions. I left in 1976 when the Shah was there.
I'll tell you why I said it. The women who get killed for not wearing their scarf properly.
Nobody gets killed. When did you go to Iran? I was in Iran.
All right, John. My instincts were correct, but I'm very grateful to you for listening. 10:30 is the time. You're an apologist for a vile regime, which is fine. But maybe get that up a little bit earlier in the call for all of our benefit. Let's start with Avi, who is in Ra'anana in Israel itself. Ravi, what would you like to say? Avi, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
I think finally, in all your analysis, you brought up a really important point, that Israel is the safe haven. I'm a British-born Jew from London who moved here 13 years ago, and I know existentially I might be safer in London, but I don't have control over my own security. Here, even though, the Iran wants to wipe us all out tomorrow, it's much easier if all the Jews come to Israel and he sends a nuclear bomb. But at the end of the day, we're in control of our own destiny. And I think what Netanyahu has to do, you asked that question, what would I like Netanyahu to do? I don't want to be in a war with Iran, right? My kids slept in a bomb shelter that night. There's nothing more fearful, and I don't think people truly appreciate and understand what it's like to be told that there are 300, missiles and UAVs and ballistic missiles on the way to you, and, potentially no one knows what the result of that's going to be. I think Netanyahu should have attacked immediately at the same time, so Iran can't just say, okay, we're done now, we threw our punch, we're done. That's not how this part of the world works. I think you have to project strength. We have to show the world, yes, you can ask us for restraint, but what guarantees do we have? And you know, you're going to argue, well, you know, we're the warmongers here, but at the end of the day...
No, I'm not. Don't tell me what I'm going to argue. I mean, just pause for a moment to reflect upon what you've already said, because you have rendered the Iranian response to the attack upon the consulate in Damascus both necessary and right under your own analysis of how that part, in your own words, how that part of the world works.
Well, I think the attack on the consulate, I think you have to look at in context as well. So you're talking about an attack that was not on the embassy. It was on the IRGC building next to it, which was being run by the military.
You heard what Keir Starmer
which was being used to plan further attacks on us.
Yes.
So
the Iranian attacks upon military positions in Israel were okay then?
Well, I think if you want to start a war, yes.
No, but Israel attacked under your analysis. I mean, the distinction between the consulate building and the neighbouring building is, for some people, it's moot. But as Keir Starmer pointed,
I'm not sure why you're focusing on that point, though.
Well, because it's clearly
proven.
Yes, go on.
James, it's clearly proven that the October 7th massacres were funded, directed by Iran. It's clear that Iran is.
It's clear that Iran is a supporter of Hamas. But I was just literally, and we'll continue with your broader analysis. I was just pointing out that your phrase, that is how things have to be done in that part of the world, could equally apply to Iran responding to the attack upon on their territory in Damascus, as it could to Israel responding to the attack upon their territory in Israel. So I don't want to say convince me or persuade me, because that trivializes the broader conversation. But explain to me why risking, I have to say, a full-scale regional war, that phrase is now being bandied about quite casually in all of the analysis, why you think risking a full-scale regional war would serve your need and desire, your right even, to safety better than restraint.
Well, you have a country in Iran being run by Islamic fundamentalists who are sworn to the destruction of Israel, who have been stating this and working actively towards it for the last 30 years.
Yes.
So my question is, what better serves my safety? To continue that until they have nuclear weapons, or to say, yeah, it's going to be really, really terrible. I'm going to have to live through a war.
You've gone a little further.
I have 4 children here.
No, I
don't want to live through a war, right? I don't want to live through a war. But I also know as a Jew, and I've seen my history over the last 2,000 years, and I've walked through the camps of Auschwitz. I know how this ends. I know how this ends if we don't stand up and fight for ourselves. I know how it ends when the world turns around and says, yeah, you know what, we'll look after you. It didn't happen 75 years ago in living memory. My grandmother, who had to escape on the kinder transport, always turned around to me and said, that better the world tells us tells us off after we defend ourselves. But we can't live by those guarantees anymore.
So hang on.
Are we going to hang around until Iran has a nuclear weapon?
I don't know. I mean that is a very, very powerful point that you make. So but you've gone a little further than I understood when you said that Netanyahu should have responded immediately. You want Israel to declare war on Iran and seek the annihilation of the ruling regime in Tehran. And I have to remind you, Avi. Hang on. Hang on. I have to remind you of the civilian casualties that would obviously entail. But that's what you want.
No, that's not what I want.
Sorry, carry on.
I don't want a regional war. I want the Iranian people to stand up and get rid of the Ayatollah.
Yeah, but the question is, what do you want Netanyahu to do? The question is, what do you want Benjamin Netanyahu to do, not what do you want the Iranian people to do? The Iranian people who, of course, in the main, are both opposed to and repressed by the regime of the Ayatollahs. But that's not the phone-in. The phone-in today is, what do you, as someone who fits perfectly the caucus of people I want to hear from first today, what do you want your Prime Minister to do?
I want him to ensure that he does everything he possibly can.
I mean actions, things we can measure and describe, not wishes, but actions.
I think that he uses the international pressure to impose every single sanction possible on Iran.
But the international pressure at the moment is urging restraint from him. So what do you want him to do in the context of the response to the attack this weekend? When the general says there will be a retaliation, but it remains unclear what form the retaliation would take, and it remains unclear whether or not it would be forceful enough to tip the worsening violence into a full-scale regional war, what do you want that retaliation to look like, to be?
I want it to set back the nuclear program in Iran.
So what would that involve, Avi? I feel like we're dancing on pinheads here. What do you want them to blow up or attack or nothing, something, anything?
I don't know the military options available, but what I do know is that unless the world can give us proper guarantee that instead of Biden sending $9 billion, right, which he did to the Ayatollahs just before October 7th, you know, there's an incredible Economist article from September.
I am kind of really clear about what I'm asking today, and I fully accept that you say you're not really qualified to answer it. But I also sense there's a reluctance, perhaps, to speak in slightly vaguer terms. I mean, you do, because you said, I wish Netanyahu had attacked Iran straight away, which would be a declaration of war, wouldn't it?
Well, how is sending 300 UAVs and ballistic missiles not a declaration of war?
Well, because as Iran has sought to explain, and you can agree with them or disagree with them, that it was a sort of muscle-flexing exercise that killed precisely nobody.
And it only precisely killed nobody through basically an incredible defence that no one knew would happen.
Well, hang on, and the 72-hour warning.
If we destroy the nuclear reactor,
but I wanted to learn from you today.
Injure anyone? Is that not a declaration of war? Then that's fine. That's great.
Yeah, yes.
I'd like us to have
but as you said yourself, none of us know how feasible that is. I mean, as a general rule, blowing up nuclear reactors is quite hazardous, I think. Yeah, but I hear you. So we're not going to reach a point. We're not going to reach a point where you can say, "I want him to do," and that probably highlights the difficulty that the government has in defining or describing what retaliation would actually look like. But if it is another round of cyber attacks or assassinations, that won't be enough for you. You want something more substantive than that. You want something that damages the capability of Iran to inflict real damage on Israel.
I think right now what we're doing if we do nothing is the same as what we've been doing with Hamas for the last 10 years, and we saw how that ended on October 7th. Yes,
I know not what, but it must be the terror of the earth, as King Lear might put it.
I think we need something that serves two purposes. One, reminds the region that we're not the punching bag. Two,
I think that's pretty clear.
The Ayatollahs back. Sets the Ayatollahs back to the point where the people of Iran can start the uprising that they need. And three, has global consequences on that.
And this would involve Netanyahu ignoring the global pressure for restraint. And that is a risk, I suppose, although history teaches us that the support might be temporarily diminished, but it would never disappear altogether. Thank you, Avi. Rufus is in Stanmore. Rufus, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm a member of the Israel Supporters Club because I've got parents, son and sister who live there. Two things that I think Netanyahu could do. Yeah. First of all, Israel has goodwill at this instant for a few seconds and could shout from the rooftops about the situation, the genocide that Iran would like to achieve. If you go back to pre-79, Israel was very friendly with Iran. There were El Al flights into Iran before the Ayatollahs came in.
Can we derive some optimism from? Would it be naive to suggest that particular pendulum could swing back conceivably one day?
Well, yes, I think Netanyahu has been trying for a long time, the Israelis have been trying for a long time to help an Iranian grassroots revolution, and I think that may well have an effect. The Iranian people don't want this war. They are generally.
But do the Israeli people? That's the question I'm asking today.
No, I don't think they do.
What
actually.
do they want then? Or what do you want, Rufus? What do you want Netanyahu to do?
Well, first of all, to explain the position, and then perhaps pick off a few Iranian baddies.
Yeah.
And then I think the two-state solution is completely dead. If you understand the Israeli psyche, they are not going to give space, time, effort to a two-state solution. That's dead in the water since October the 7th.
So what's the alternative?
Well, Caroline Glick has proposed that anybody who is, say, should be called a Palestinian, could have Jordanian or Egyptian citizenship and then the right to live in Israel. And that would go back to your caller from Portsmouth, who would like everybody to live in peace there. So the Palestinians would have the right to live there, and if they lived in peace,
do you
that's
imagine
fine.
if you were listening to the radio and somebody described the future of Jewish people in the Middle East in the way that you've just described the future of Palestinian people? We're going to give you the right to citizenship in Jordan or Egypt or Saudi or anywhere else you want to live, and you'll be able to live there as a citizen, but you can't have your own homeland.
Well, they do have a homeland. It's called Jordan.
Okay. Okay, mate. Take care. James is in Ely. Have you got in Cardiff, though, not in Cambridgeshire?
Hey.
I was going to start doing some accent-based banter with you, but thankfully I spotted...
I would love to. It's been really strange.
It's the Wrong Ele. What would you like to say? What made you pick up on this one?
Well, I was talking about it. I just think that any sort of limit on restriction just tends to usually sort of disproportionately affect the lower classes, I find. And
or poorer people, certainly.
Yeah, poorer people. Yeah. And obviously, I mentioned I'm from Ely in Cardiff, which is one of the sort of lower income suburbs. One of the worst ones, really. And I've grown up here for 25 years. And I've seen different sort of implementations come in with regards to different sort of vices that people have. The Welsh government, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, introduced minimum alcohol unit pricing.
Yeah.
That didn't change anything. All that did was just the people who I see who are the most affected by alcohol abuse. You know, I haven't seen any sort of change in the amount of alcohol they're consuming.
That is anecdotal. I think the science suggests that did go all right, that introduction.
Okay, well, anecdotal is also...
But that's fine. I mean, anecdotes are interesting.
Say again, sorry?
Anecdotes are interesting, and it hasn't helped anyone in your circle that it was ostensibly designed to help.
Not in my circle, just people I might happen to be judging, watching, whatever. Yeah. But also, another point I had was I'm a civil engineer in my final year of university, and it's a completely irrelevant topic, but my dissertation was on the 20-mile-per-hour implementation that the Welsh government imposed in September 2023.
Yes.
Changing all 30-mile-per-hour roads to 20-mile-per-hour roads.
It wasn't all of them, was it?
Well, that's the one of the things I talked about in my dissertation.
Okay.
Is it going to be all of them? Is it not? Anyway, as part of my dissertation, I interviewed 40 van drivers at the delivery company that I work for.
Yeah.
And I asked them 10 different questions. One of the questions was, during off-peak times, do you notice the implementation much? During peak times, school hours, rush hours, whatever, do you notice the effects? People said that during peak times, not really. They're not really... I'm
going to have to urge you to be relevant. I hope that doesn't sound rude.
No, that's the thing. I am coming into it.
Yeah, but you need to hurry up. You need to get to the relevant bit quicker.
Right, okay. Well, basically, people don't like being told what to do, which is what my survey results found.
Yeah.
I found people were deliberately exceeding the speed limit more at 20 miles per hour.
Yeah, still not seeing why it's relevant to the smoking.
You need to speak to people at LBC, mate, because when I told her this, she was buzzing. She was happy to get me on the call. So,
okay, that's not true.
Right, okay then.
They're absolutely adamant that you didn't tell anybody about your thesis at university being great.
Right, okay.
So, can you in a sentence say something interesting?
Free Palestine.
Okay. Dave's in Caterham. Dave, what's changed?
Well, I was a police officer from late 90s.
I'll tell you what I'll be a Ray Liotta today, Dave. If the copper that arrested me rings in, not that he'd have any way of remembering or knowing who I was at the time, but some of the details of that tale might have rung a few bells. He'll be straight on the Ray Liotta roster. Go on. Sorry to interrupt. You were in the force.
That's all right. Yeah, and the policing now, you picked up on it, and I don't think you realised. When I joined the job, it was a police force. It's now referred to as a police service.
Yeah, I did realise that, and I kind of hoped that no one would do what you're about to do. So explain to me how that changing semantics means that you don't get arrested for shoplifting anymore.
Because we're now seen by the politicians. That's all when it started to become a real political football.
So what are they doing instead then? So you're all sitting around now going, God, I wish we were out catching shoplifters, but we can't because we're called a police service now, not a police force.
Well, they're stuck with so much paperwork, even with
But that's got nothing to do with what the word is, has it, with force or service?
It is, because we're now having to record everything that we do, so the service is proven. So we can prove that we are providing the service.
Yeah, but you need to record everything that you do because we're talking about an era when people were routinely pushed downstairs.
Well, unfortunately...
430,104 offences, up 37% on last year. And guess what it was called last year, Dave?
What's that?
The police service. So why has it gone up 37% in the last 12 months?
There's loads of societal reasons. The cost of living and all stuff like this, that comes into it, obviously. I really have a concentration on the police because of my history. So if we don't have the police officers, if the police officers don't have the time to go and deal with this, and it's been happening for a long time, then the people that are suffering, the business owners, won't even call.
Which is why the 430,104 offences quite possibly doesn't even touch the side of the reality. With respect, Dave, and with gratitude for your service, the redefining of a police force into a police service has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the number of shoplifting offences going unremarked and unsolved, if that's even a word, or unpunished. Peter's in Loch Lomond. Peter, what would you like to say?
The first thing I'd like to say, James, is I wish there was a James O'Brien in Scottish broadcasting because the difference between the two tells a large story.
Well, I'm going to take that as a compliment, and I'm not going to ask too many questions in case it knocks some of the gloss off the compliment, Peter. So thank you.
No. It's 100% assured, guaranteed compliment. You asked at the beginning, James, how did we get to this situation? Yes. And you also mentioned personal antipathy a few seconds ago. If you go back to the last Holyrood election, which isn't very far long ago, Alex Salmond, who I think is the most vilified politician since Daniel O'Connell in British and Irish politics, was saying to the electorate, vote SNP 1 and Alba 2. And if that had happened, if he had come out, if Nicola Sturgeon had come out and agreed to that or indeed supported it, they would have an absolute majority in Holyrood now, and they wouldn't be in this situation. The situation...
Because the arithmetic would be very different, and there'd be a higher number of Alba MSPs.
The second vote is allocated proportionately across the parties, if you like, to produce extra seats, yeah? Does that make sense?
Yes, of course it does.
That's the way it would be. I mean, I left the SNP because it stopped being a party of independence. And I always intended to vote Green after the day that Scotland became independent, but I couldn't do that because their party is more interested in identity politics than saving the planet. How did we get here? Personal antipathy, Sturgeon's antipathy against Alex Salmond, the man who made her in every way, is Shakespearean in its resonances. It really is.
You've got a lovely turn of phrase, Peter. No, really. I mean, it's a really lovely sort of historical and literary references. But I mean, I will read you the texts that come in now, inevitably, and this is why I find it such a hard path to navigate. So Tom's in capital letters saying, I'm with Peter. And Carr is in touch to say, don't believe this Alba headbanger, he's talking nonsense. So do you see what I mean when I say that of all the subjects, maybe not all the subjects, but I do find this one tricky.
Do I sound like a headbanger, James?
Well, you do to him. That's all I can say. You don't currently to me, but that might be because I'm a sucker for your literary and Irish history references. But what you said about the breakdown in relations between salmon and sturgeon, I think that's a matter of historical fact. How does that lead to where we are today? How much of what is happening this morning with it widely believed that Humza Yousaf is going to walk the plank? How much of that is on him, and how much of it is a sort of inevitable upshot of what he inherited?
Well, it's fundamentally it's what he inherited. Although he was Sturgeon's candidate, so he knew what he was getting. Can I suggest something quite fundamental, and that'll make me a conspiracist? Ask yourself the question. Politics is conspiracies. Let's face it. Ask yourself the fundamental question: cui bono? Who benefits from this situation? The British state benefits from. The British state has never failed to infiltrate and undermine any threat in history to its economic interests, its territorial interests, or indeed its existential interests. So they're sitting gleefully rubbing their hands and thinking the agents have done well.
Well, that is the point where you do start sounding a bit mad. And thank you for giving me a heads up that you knew you were going to. So how would you account for that analysis? I mean, where would the fingerprints of the conspiracy you describe be found? Because
it's a reasonable question.
Because Humza Yousaf chose to jettison the Greens. The Greens were poised probably to remove themselves from the relationship anyway. The decision to scrap 2030 climate targets was his. I don't see where on any of these junctions the decision to turn in the direction that was turned would have been influenced by state actors south of the border.
Yeah, well, if you go back, the point is that how can I put this?
Well, possibly you can't. You can't provide me with any evidence because there isn't any. That's the point about it.
The SNP stopped being a party of independence, and then it decided to die on a number of mad hills.
Okay,
the biggest.
But how does that? Why does that point to British influence, British state influence?
Right to Sturgeon. Right to Sturgeon. She chose the path. I mean, one of the reasons
Nicola Sturgeon is an agent of the British state.
It wouldn't amaze me.
Right. I'm glad we got there. I pushed you, and we got there in the end, and that, I'm afraid, is probably the point at which we can both agree providing evidence to support that contention is impossible. Lewis is in Aberdare. Lewis, what would you like to say?
I'm all for the changes myself. I think I'm as someone who receives PIP,
yes,
and as someone who has PTSD, as well as a lifelong condition in regards to movement and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that we do need to look at it, because I do think that
So which of yours benefits would we be taking away?
Well, it depends really, because like the PTSD is something I have to manage, and I've had to manage it for many, many years. And I've had many years of counselling. I've had years where I've not had to have counselling. So, but I do think that, and I hope I don't upset people saying this, but I think there's too many lazy people who do not want to put themselves in the right place.
But how do we know you're not one of them?
Well, because I work, James.
Well, so do huge numbers of people on PIP.
But there's huge numbers who don't, and I think.
Yeah, but we can take yours away as well.
Well, that's fine.
Because people working, they won't be the shirkers; they'll be the scroungers. You see,
I'm talking about the scroungers, and
but how do I know you're not one?
Well, because I work, James.
Yeah, but scrounging just means you get more money on top of your wages through your PIP
James,
payment.
You're not helping me have this debate now, are you? By just
I'm showing you what the rhetoric. I'm showing you what the rhetoric sounds like when you're on the receiving end of it, rather than.
Well, I've been on the receiving end of it for most of my life. For someone who suffered with PTSD, lost 10 years of his life, someone who has been homeless at times. Someone who has done work in the mental health
So your need is real and acute. How do we identify the people whose need is not real and acute?
Well, I suppose by making sure you pull them up when they're driving around in cars that are given to them on the sofa when they're actually using it to go to work in and stuff like that.
Hang on, they're not working. They're not what you said they weren't working.
Well, you might say they're not working, but they're doing a bit
you
of
said they
were
or whatever. Right. How
know.
do we find them?
Well, by doing means testing and proper means testing. I mean, I personally
But if it's
think
cash in
not
hand,
working.
it's not going to come up on means testing.
Listen, I do agree.
I am
with
listening.
The fact
I think I'm listening a bit too closely, probably.
Well, no. I have listened this morning to what he had to say, and the fact that the means testing isn't. I don't think it's fit for purpose, and I think this is why some people are getting stuff that they shouldn't be getting.
Right.
Because
and how do we know you're not one of them?
How do we know? Well, do you want me to post my means test to you then so you can read it? And do you want me to come on the show so you can physically see me? Would you like to know what I do for a living and how much money I earn?
You are on the show. I'm just wondering how the system will work in order to distinguish between you and someone who's not telling the truth about their condition.
I have these problems. I live with them.
Yes, and everyone you're talking about says that they do too. So how do we tell the difference?
Yeah, but I'm honest enough to come on here and say
they all say they're honest.
Of course they will.
All the scroungers and shirkers say that they're honest.
Of course they will.
So how do we know who's telling the truth?
Because we need proper means testing, don't we? And this is what they're looking at bringing in, and I'm all for it.
But means testing looks at what your income is, not what your illness is.
No, it doesn't. Not necessarily.
I don't think you know what means, mate.
Oh, look, I've just done a test, okay?
Yeah.
And no, James. I mean, do you claim PIP?
No.
Have you ever gone through the procedure of having to claim for it?
No.
Well, I have.
I know.
I've had to do it for So,
but you don't think the system works.
James,
you can't go from saying, Lewis,
having to do this.
Yes, exactly, and it works for you. It's effectively worked for you.
That's because
why are you opposed to it?
I really want to be on PIP.
No, I don't think you're listening to my question. You told me the system needed to be reformed, but now you're telling me that because you've been through it, you're the one that can say that it works.
No, I'm saying I said it needs changing. It needs looking at.
But not for you. Not for you.
Oh, actually, it does, because I don't actually think that I get what I possibly should be allowed to get due to my other parts of my
No, so you should be getting more.
Yeah, but
other people should be getting less.
Maybe, yeah.
And that is essentially what the policy is designed to achieve. Yes, in your mind, you should be getting more, and other people who fit into the categories that you've described as having free cars or lying about their illnesses and working cash in hand, they should be getting less. So I want you to get more, or I certainly want you to keep what you're getting. What I don't understand is how we look after people like you without also looking after some people who may not be being completely honest. And if you can tell me what the test would look like, what Mel Stride's test would look like, then I'll bite your arm off. But we first have to work out how 1.9 million people waiting to access mental health services are going to be helped by adding another 360,000 to the queue. Olamide is in Deptford. Olamide, what would you like to say?
Well, I think stop and search is very important, considering the level of crime going on in the city at the moment.
Yes.
But what I would like to say is the approach is very, very also important. The police needs to do their job very well.
But what is the acceptable approach? You're more likely to be stopped and searched than I am. We are both as pure as the driven snow in terms of criminality. Neither of us are ever going to be carrying a knife or carrying drugs or any of those things. You're going to face this a lot more often than I am. What is the way in which it can be done to you that doesn't feel unfair?
Well, can I share my experience with the police that I ever had with you? So probably you understand where I'm coming from.
Okay.
A couple of years back, I was stopped on Blackfriars Road in Oakham Road. I was coming from church. I was in suit. I was in smart, the best way I could be.
Yeah.
And I was asked I just saw an unmarked car behind me, and they pointed a gun at me while I was still driving, asking me to park.
Wow.
So I parked my car, raised my hands up. They drove my car and parked it properly. The gun was still being pointed at me. And I asked the officer, what was the offense? Immediately, they handcuffed me. They said they want to stop and search me. And also, they suspected I was carrying a gun.
Yeah.
I said, I've never seen a gun in my lifetime except this one you are pointing at me. I've never seen a live gun in my entire life. They never believed me. I was literally shaking. And they searched my car. They did it more. In fact, they opened my engine. They opened my air cleaner box. They did all kind of things for about 45 minutes. While they were doing all of this, I was still being handcuffed beside the road. I was highly embarrassed as a black man.
Of course you were.
So at the end of the day, nothing was found. I was given a kind of reference. The police officer said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a car mechanic. I work in Deptford. I work in Oakham Road." He said, "Wait a minute." He described where I worked. I said, "That's where I work." He said, "Oh, sorry, it's a mistaken of identity. I think I know you." Then I realized, the moment he said, "I think I know you," I realized he's a police within the community. And then he said something. He said, "Are you able to drive home?" Then I live in Stockwell. I said, "I will manage to drive home." He said, "If you can, I will help you to drive your car home." I said, "Don't worry, I will drive home, because I can't even trust you now to drive my car home." It was a nasty experience.
Nasty doesn't come close. So what? Well, this is my problem now. I'm moving on a little bit because there's so many people waiting to talk, but I don't want you to feel hurried. But how could that have been done in a way that left you thinking that it was okay?
So I questioned him. I said, "How did we come to this place that you have to embarrass me this way? Was it because I'm a black man?" Or the man said, "Well, we're doing our job, and we understand that this must have been a mistaken of identity. But if you want to prosecute us, we can give you a reference for this, so you can't." I can't be bothered.
No.
And I'll tell you one of the reasons why I can't be bothered. Number one is, from then on, I don't trust the police. And I've got to say this. Because
forever?
I wouldn't say forever, but I can't, because I wouldn't say forever, because obviously police are there to protect each and every one of us on the street and make sure the state is safe. But of course, they have to do their job right. I know they're in a difficult situation finding out the criminals as to the right people on the street, but they still have to. Take, for instance, if I had been shot without mistaken of identity, what would the police say after my death? It was
but you rang me to tell me that you thought it could be a good thing if it was done differently.
Obviously, there must have been one or two things that must have led to the investigation asking me to stop, but not by pointing a gun at me.
Yeah, but if the thing that led to the investigation was the fear that another black man who doesn't look anything like you might have a gun on him, they have to point a gun at you in case you've got one in your glove compartment, they would say. So I don't know whether you realise that when you rang in, you essentially said to me that you want to live in a country where people are treated differently by the police on account of their skin colour, as long as they do it nicely.
I am not. To be honest with you, I am not a discriminating person. I don't mind. I don't care whoever police are stopping, whether white or black. I don't want to raise that issue. I do not say because I'm a black. I just want police to do their job professionally. Because look at the way I was harassed. Because that is the difference between me being alive and being dead, was that the police officer did not pull his trigger. If he had done at that point,
well, exactly.
I wouldn't be here talking to you.
But I will almost certainly never find myself in that situation.
How would you feel in my state, Mr. Nick? How would you feel in my state at that point that a live gun was pointed at me with a pretense of I'm having a gun in my car?
No, I'm not making light of it. I think,
and it wasn't just one officer; there were about 4 of them.
Yeah. So how can you ring me and say I'm okay with stop and search as long as they do it nicely?
So it's not every officer.
What does nicely look like, though? Is the thing I'm confused by.
Well, if they ask me to park and I refuse to park, because the law is, if a policeman stops you, you have to respect the law.
I'm gonna push you a bit, Olamide. You're not answering my question. How could that have been handled in a way that you wouldn't have been upset by?
Good. If I was asked to stop.
Yeah, but they think you've got a gun, so they're not going to say, "Hello, potential gunman, would you mind awfully pulling over?" The problem is that the whole conversation is premised upon the acceptance of the idea that it's okay for this to happen to you because you're black. And I can't say that as a white man, I can't say, and somehow people have become conditioned to think, oh no, if they were polite, it would be okay. You can't get past the central point, which is, here are 2 people, here are the police service who are policing by consent to protect all of us, but they're going to treat these 2 people differently because of the colour of their skin. So you can say to me, I'm okay with that as someone who's on the wrong end of it, but what you can't say to me is what it would look like, because you can't do it politely if they think that if they genuinely think that you're likely to shoot them. And of course they can't prove that it is genuinely likely, or even that they genuinely believe that. They just have to say that they do in order to justify the use of the force that you describe. Alex is in Tring. Alex, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say, normally I agree with you. This time, 100% don't agree with you.
So it's bad news when a member of the governing party defects to the Labour Party?
The thing is...
Well, then you do agree with me.
She would be a Tory MP who was a doctor and decided he couldn't stay with the Tories because of the principles. That's fine. But now, if I go knocking on the door as a Labour MP or a councillor saying, vote for me... the intelligent voter will say, well, no, you've accepted an extreme right-winger in your party for no reason. Why should we trust you? Because we don't trust any politicians anyway.
I'm not going to have the same. I don't want to have the same conversation with every caller today. Can I cautiously suggest you haven't read her letter of resignation?
No, I have. I've heard. Well, sorry, I've heard what she said.
This is a very simple question. You're on the doorstep now, and I, as a potential voter, am asking you: did you read her letter of resignation?
Sorry, I've only heard snippets of it. She said wasn't happy about the vote.
Don't gloss over this point here. Have you read her letter of resignation, James? No, I haven't.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so if you want to use the last fella, the doctor, and his comments on the NHS as a basis for welcoming his defection, then the comparison you would need to make, much as many of her contributions to public discourse have been profoundly pungent, on the question of housing, she has both the track record and credibility. So that's what you'd say on the doorstep. The people of Kent, the people of Dover, face an enormous housing crisis, and she's been utterly disillusioned with the Conservative Party's attempts to solve it, and she believes that Keir Starmer in government will be able to solve it. Next question.
And all people see is that...
All you see, because you haven't read the letter and you don't want to see anything else.
No, I have heard that... Because I haven't read it properly, I can't say it, but
It's all right, I've given you a breakdown of it now, and I've addressed some of your concerns that were built on not having read it.
Yeah, but people will...
Not people, Alex, you. You can talk about how you feel, despite having been availed of the facts and clinging to your emotional response, which was based, as we've established, on a complete absence of research. But you can't say what other people feel. You can only say what you feel, because you now know the facts.
Well, I know the fact that...
she's not standing at the next election, so quite why anyone would bring it up on the doorstep is a question that only you know the answer to.
Well, they would say, why does Keir Starmer need her to come in?
Doesn't need her, but he just wins more votes by having her. And also, read the resignation letter before ringing a radio station, yeah?
I did...
It's 10:31, Thomas Watts has the headlines. Johnny's in Whitby. Johnny, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Johnny.
I would like to say that while I personally find it repulsive that she has joined, I do think it is politically smart for him to let her in.
Can't argue with that. I've been saying it all morning.
No. I myself am an ex-Labour member.
Right.
And of course, being only 25, I can't say that Keir Starmer speaks to me as a younger person. In fact, when you look at where I am, or just north of where I am, in the northeast mayoral election,
yes.
Jamie Driscoll came a reasonably close second, and that was mainly funded by younger people like myself in a grassroots campaign. I feel as if that's the one faction that Keir Starmer is not, that I can see going after in his grand unification, is younger people, because they often statistically have a lower turnout.
Yes.
So, but I feel as if that might be actually damaging to the future generation, to have this grand coalition, but to be ignoring the next generation.
Yeah. Just to clarify, Labour won the North East mayoral election.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So you're doing that Corbyn thing, aren't you? With respect, you're saying we lost, but actually we won. And the fact that we didn't lose by that much proves that we're actually right.
No,
you are,
not
mate. Respectfully, you are. You lost because the way you spoke then, even I had to double check.
Oh, my apologies.
No, that's all right. But you lost. You got spanked. but you still somehow won, or at least losing proves the point that you're right.
No, I wouldn't say losing proves that
so what does it
anyone's
prove?
right. Huh?
So what does it prove, losing?
What does it prove?
Yeah,
well,
because you raised Jamie Driscoll. I was a bit confused as to why. So you lost, but it proves something positive. What does it prove?
Well, it proves that there is a group of voters that Keir Starmer has not won over, and that is important if you're going for.
Well, he hasn't won over all the voters that supported losing candidates. He didn't win over any of the voters that supported losing candidates.
Yes, of course.
So what does it prove?
It's important if you're trying to make that tent as big as possible. You want to essentially say, not that I'm not listening to you.
But that had nothing to do with youth, did it? It had nothing to do with youth. There's plenty of people in your corner of the Labour Party who are my age and older.
I'm an ex-Labour member.
Your ex-corner of the Labour Party who are my age and older. It's not. I don't know why you're boiling it down to a youth thing.
Because I feel as if my generation at the moment is being ignored both by Labour and the Conservatives, and I feel as if that's dangerous for both Labour and the Conservatives, especially when you look at how politically active younger people can be. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the universities, not just in the United States, but here at the moment,
yes,
and you're not seeing any support for any kind of political establishment within those universities.
Well, again, you're
leaping
from an expression of solidarity with Palestinian people and profound objections to the continuing carnage that Israel is visiting upon the Gaza Strip to a level of disillusionment with party politics in this country that you simply don't have the evidence to make. I'm conscious of your sincerity and your honesty. But you're not making perfect sense, Johnny. Who will you be supporting in a general election after 14 years of Tory rule?
I will be voting for the Greens because I'm not going to reward Labour for Tory failure.
Okay, and that's a position, and if God forbid that is the vote that sees a Tory MP get returned in Whitby, then on your head be it. Damien's in Newport. Damien, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. Long-time listener.
Welcome.
Great show. I'll keep my point relatively brief, but I think it's a very, very important one. I don't agree that they should be allowed to participate, mainly because it is an incredibly frivolous sideshow, a dead cat, if you will. What's happening now, you've got this huge debate about whether they should or they shouldn't, and the miserable reality for the innocents living on the ground is unimaginable. We cannot even think about
but you're conflating. I understand your point, but if it's really such a frivolous sideshow, then why do you need to ban anything or anyone from taking part? Because the only reason you would ban somebody from taking part is if you thought it was a serious issue. So you can't have it both ways, mate.
No, I get what you're saying.
That's because it's true.
Okay, well, I know this is your domain and your manner, so I'm not going to.
Explain to me how it can be simultaneously frivolous and also so important that Israel should be banned from joining in.
Well, we're having this conversation. You're having this debate on the radio.
Yes.
And countless other stations throughout Europe and the world are talking about a song contest.
Well, not technically a song contest. Technically, they're talking about Gaza protests and the arena in which they're currently taking place. So,
you're playing the devil's advocate now, and
I'm not, Damien. You haven't. Hey, mate, let's not fall out. You made a point. It was a bit silly, and probably because you've come on first, you haven't had time to think it through properly. But you can't come on and say it's really, really frivolous. It's a big dead cat, but it's so important that Israel should be banned from taking part. And as I say, let's not fall out, but just needs a little bit more work. If I was giving you back your homework, it would be a C+ for effort, but probably a D- for execution. David's in Kensington. David, what would you like to say?
Fascinating question, James. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I think that one of the things that causes a lot of stress is a mismatch between what you expect and what actually happens and your ability to control it. And if I think about our values as British people, we expect fairness, we expect justice, we expect being a prosperous country to be prosperous, and we expect our government to be competent. And that hasn't happened. Personally, I blame Boris. Brexit was a lie, as you pointed out at the beginning.
Once in a while.
When we have the management of the pandemic, we have vast expenditure of public money with no idea how we would pay for it. We then had hypocrisy in the way that he conducted things in Downing Street and trying to lie to cover it up. We've got the green agenda. What winds me up hugely is things like low traffic neighbourhoods and ULEZ. It's justified by the green agenda, but the truth is it's all about raising money. And the politicians behind those things, again, they're lying to us. We can see through it.
It was all going so well until you started denying the science. But I don't want you...
No, I'm not denying the science.
No, you are. But I don't want you to get angry with me.
Really cover it.
Well, it's 12:57, and I've done it about 467 times before.
So let's press on then.
Well, except that, in a way... Regardless of where you sit on ULEZ, and I think the mayoral election gave us a fairly clear picture of where most Londoners sit on it, contrary to what right-wing media has been telling us or where they were sitting. It's another example of a wedge that has been driven between us, because with the greatest of love and respect, you're getting your knickers in a twist about being told to drive slowly through residential areas, and that's not a position you were born in. It's a position that has been inflicted
James,
upon
don't
you.
Tell me what I'm getting my knickers in a twist about.
Well, you just told me you just said it makes me very angry.
What? No. What makes me angry, James, is the lying justification.
But there's no one's lying about that. That's the problem. But the fact is that even this has gone on a slightly unexpected trajectory, because you're kind of proving how easy it is for people to get angry about things that aren't true. And you start off with things that are true. Get angry with Boris Johnson for being delinquent. Get angry with the political establishment for being completely corrupted. Get angry about the management of the pandemic, which even Dominic Cummings says today should have seen him and Boris Johnson sent to jail. But then, oddly, you've got ULEZ and speed limits in your pocket, which in the context of the really big stuff you just mentioned sounds a bit silly. James texted as you spoke, David, to say, oh dear, he's gone nuts. But I think unintentionally that's an illustration of why we are such a sort of unhappy population, because people are constantly telling us things like, scientists are lying to you about the weather. And obviously they're not. But if you did believe it, you'd be bloody furious. Thank you, though. Always a pleasure. Leon is in Enfield. Leon, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for taking my call.
Very welcome.
I'm just calling in about, what your question about Netanyahu's strategy or the IDF-Israel strategy with this. And, with regards to, for example, now you say that they are reoperating in Jabalia in the north of Gaza, because areas that they have, previously defeated the Hamas battalions there, they've, the IDF has withdrawn, and then Hamas has refilled the gap, and so now the IDF is going in and fighting them again in those areas, and I think that's the strategy. I actually heard an interview with Netanyahu yesterday, and he was talking a little bit about this and how the process is to defeat Hamas. It's never going to be like a kill every single fighter or kill every, everyone within the organization or the terrorist army. But there are going to be operations.
Well, what does eradicate mean then?
No, I'm saying, that's what I just said. He won't eradicate.
But that's Hamas. The language he uses.
Yes, I mean, he has done. But I think more recently he has said that, or Israel in general have said that the idea is to defeat them militarily, to prevent them.
So they won't have been eradicated, and then one day it ends.
No, but the force itself will be eradicated as a force, or as the ability to. How? Okay, so the other strategy, part of the strategy, is you're talking about Rafah. The area in Rafah is along the border with Egypt, right? There's the Philadelphia corridor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. It's that borderline across with Egypt and Gaza. That's where a lot of the weapons over the years, the resupply lines have been smuggled under the tunnels there.
I don't know how many calls I'm going to be able to take on this. I don't want to use up too much time with extraneous information. Israel's on the trajectory, potentially, to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas. That's Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. That's the focus of our conversation today.
Okay, fine.
But that was pretty clear from the start. What do you think, having heard this interview with him yesterday, what do you think Netanyahu's idea of an endgame is? And with respect, the answer to that question is not, he's just going to carry on fighting.
No, it's not carrying on.
So speak directly to the... hang on. Speak directly to the warning from the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, of an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas. Because that looks pretty inevitable to me.
Okay, right. So in terms of regular targeting of Hamas resurgence, that needs to be done. The fact is, for the day after, when Hamas is more defeated...
No, but Anthony Blinken is saying it won't be, isn't he? He's saying that they will still be there. I don't know if we're at cross purposes.
No. Let's put it like this, right? No one will come in to rule the Gaza Strip while Hamas is still a fighting force.
That's what a vacuum. That's a vacuum, then.
Yes, okay, yes. But you have to get to the point where Hamas is.
And Blinken is warning that the vacuum will be filled by anarchy and extremism, and probably Hamas. So you're subscribing to the idea that Hamas can somehow be hobbled, and that is the only thing that's still sustaining the killings in Gaza. I guess you have to believe that, don't you? Because the alternative is to face reality.
Okay, let's put it like this. What do the Americans do in Afghanistan?
No, you're doing it again, you see. We're zoning in on a really pertinent and interesting question. I'm not interested in what the Americans did in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is currently under the rule of the Taliban, Leon. I don't know if you're aware of that. So the question is about what Gaza is going to look like when this is over. And you've been on for, I think, 8 minutes. You haven't tried to answer it yet.
For 8 minutes. But my point is that...
What's Gaza going to look like when it's over?
When it's over, it needs to be ruled by local Palestinian people.
Yeah, and the Secretary of State of America is saying that is not going to happen. But as I said a moment ago, you have to sort of cling to the idea that it will. I suppose if you're supportive of the continuing carnage in Gaza, you have to sort of cling to the idea that there's a logic to the illogical, even as the American Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, points out that what is likely or close to certain to be there is an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves a vacuum filled by chaos, it will be filled by anarchy and then probably refilled by Hamas. I think this has been obvious from the start, but I suppose if I wanted to continue to support what's happening today in Rafah, then I'd have to conjure up some sort of alternative reality in which a government in waiting will step up to the plate in the Gaza Strip without having any animosity or negativity built upon the experiences of the last 6 months. Fingers crossed. Manny's in Barnet. Manny, what would you like to say?
James, good morning. First of all, I'd just like to say I think it's excellent the way you've sort of summarised the hypocrisy of what's going on between Israel and the Palestinians' plight. As for the international court's warrant, I think it's absolutely correct that morons like Benjamin Netanyahu must be held accountable for their war crimes and genocide.
Well, alleged war crimes and alleged genocide. I mean, they haven't even issued an arrest warrant yet. So I mean, I've asked fairly clear questions. I grant you, not the clearest questions I've ever asked, but fairly clear questions about why you would reach immediately for the rejection of the jurisdiction of the court or the rejection of the rights of the prosecutor to pursue these warrants and the bigger picture of what it actually changes. But the whole point, really, Manny, of having investigations and of having trials and of having arrests and prosecutions is to establish whether or not any of the things alleged have actually taken place. So for you to come on the radio as the first caller and speak as if it has already been proven is arguably unhelpful.
No, what I'm about to say is that you're absolutely right, that it should be open up for investigation. And the only reason you would refuse such investigation is when you know that you are guilty, you've got something to hide, because if you didn't, you'd be more than happy to clear your name. I mean, it's high time now that people like Biden and Suella Braverman should shut up and just go and clear off. To be honest with you, I think people like Michael Goldrow...
The President of the United States of America can't really shut up and clear off.
They can, but when he comes up with gibberish...
To be replaced by Donald Trump, which I don't know would be good for anybody, frankly.
I agree it's not sort of helpful to replace one idiot with another idiot, but you can't take American administration seriously when it comes to Israel, because they've given them unconditional support for decades. And now we've got a monster of Israeli state government, and led by Benjamin Netanyahu, that no one seems to control. Even America now are struggling to contain him. On one hand, they're saying we won't supply you with weapons so that you can carry on with the genocide at the Rafah.
Again, you've used the word genocide again, which makes a mockery of this entire conversation, because it's about whether or not the allegations should be properly prosecuted and investigated. But you see, you've already made your mind up, Manny, while calling everybody else an idiot.
I think we're all entitled to our opinion from what we've seen on our screens for the last 8 months.
You're entitled to an opinion, but if you've already decided what the verdict is, I'm not sure you're really entitled to make a contribution to a conversation about the importance of a legal process, are you, pal?
I'm more than happy to act as an individual citizen and happy to arrest.
I'm just saying we're having a conversation about the importance of a legal process, which you consider to be pointless because you've already decided what the verdict would be, which is fine. I mean, you're absolutely right. That's freedom of speech. That's your prerogative, or whatever word you want to say, but you might want to think twice about labelling everybody else involved in the conversation as an idiot if you fail to grasp something as simple as the fact that if you're already judge, jury, and executioner, then you're kind of on the side of people who don't think there is any need for a legal process. So unintentionally, you've ended up on the same side of it as the Israeli government. Helen is in Dagenham. Helen, what would you like to say?
I wanted to comment on something that you said before the news. The people in Gaza are being deprived of food, water, etc., of medical supplies and so on, and it's a deliberate act by Israel that they are in this position. Yeah?
That's the charge. That
is the charge.
That the senior prosecutor has brought. Well, there are others. Willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body and health, willful killing or murder as a war crime, intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population as a war crime, extermination and or murder, including in the context of deaths caused by starvation, as a crime against humanity, persecution as a crime against humanity, and other inhumane acts as crimes against humanity.
If I could... I just wanted to make one point, and actually to ask you, because I don't know the answer to this question. When all this started on October the 7th, on the news in October, November, December, there were lots and lots of film of these great big food lorries, aid lorries, going through Egypt over the Rafah crossing into Gaza. And that was the only way that they could get these big food lorries in. In actual fact, Egypt, I believe, ration, I think 20 a day or 25, something like that. And they trundled into Gaza with whatever they had on board, food, water, etc. Now, the Rafah crossing, which does cross from Egypt into Gaza, is controlled solely and only by the Egyptians.
Right.
If they open it, it's open. If they close it, it's closed. Israel has no say, no jurisdiction whatsoever. So if in this particular
I've just listed the charges that have been made against the Israeli politicians, and you're here to talk about the Egyptian administration.
I'm talking about what is called the deliberate starvation of the people in Gaza because they can't get supplies in.
Which is just one of the charges, of course, against the Israeli politicians.
Well, if I can do it one by one then, if you'll allow me.
I don't know that we'll have time for you to do it one by one. I'm just intrigued by why accusations or allegations of war crimes against Israeli politicians have prompted you to start talking about the Egyptian administration.
Because you were talking about the systematic starvation of people, men, women and children, because they can't get supplies in.
And you think you think that's all Egypt's fault?
No, I'm saying to you that Egypt has closed the Rafah crossing.
Right.
Okay, they've closed it. For whatever reason they've closed it,
But
closed
you are,
it.
I mean, we're listing an incredible charge sheet of allegations against the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli Defence Minister, and you want us to talk about Egypt. I think a lot of people will find that quite confusing. And surely, if there is confusion, then all the more reason to send in a supranational organisation to allow international scrutiny to take place.
Now, you have seen the pictures, I take it, of the tunnels under Gaza going into Egypt.
Well, it depends where, on whose broadcasts.
It's on the news.
Whose media? Which media has published those pictures? Because I can't get my colleagues into Gaza. I can't. Matt Fry's not allowed in. Lise Doucette from the BBC isn't allowed in. Christiane Amanpour at CNN isn't allowed in. So we have to be very wary about what we think we know about what's going on in Gaza, which again, Helen, leads us back to the relevance and importance of allowing unbiased international
I'm not there,
observers in. So why? I mean, and also, I have seen pictures of settlers and activists preventing trucks getting through gates that are actually open. But again, I'm confused why you want the conversation to be about Egypt today.
Because I don't understand this mass starvation if there are tunnels connecting.
I think actually Israel currently has control. Israel does currently have control of the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing.
No, they do not. You're completely wrong. They have nothing to do with the Rafah crossing whatsoever. They never have had. It's not under their jurisdiction. It's closed because the other side wants it to stay closed. Why?
No, well, I mean, you can keep saying that. It doesn't necessarily make it true. So the question I really want you to answer is why you want to talk about Egypt today.
The systematic starvation of
people. You can't. I'd rather you didn't just keep repeating yourself. Why do you want to talk about Egypt today and not about the ease, for example, with which Israel could refute these allegations?
Israel is being accused of starving the people in Gaza.
And willful killing and murder as a war crime and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population as a war crime and extermination and or murder, including in the context of deaths caused by starvation as a crime against humanity, persecution as a crime. I mean, if your point is valid, then you'd just raise it in court, wouldn't you, to prove that the accusation is not fair?
And when Israel wanted to launch a big attack on Gaza...
you can't keep hopping away from everything I say. If your point is valid, and I'm far from sure that it is valid, but if it is, then Israel would be able to offer it up in defence of against the allegations. So why would they not do that then?
Why did they send thousands of leaflets into Gaza saying, get out? Where the people could go.
Sorry, go where? Go where? Helen?
Exactly, go where? But they gave them 6 hours notice to get out.
But to get out to go where? Because they've gone back to bombarding places that had been previously cleared. Some of these people have already moved 4 or 5 times. Again, on a morning where we're examining incredibly egregious allegations against the Israeli government, you seem to want the conversation to be about Egypt's government and pointless pamphlets dropped upon areas that were going to be bombed regardless of whether people moved or not.
You tend to assume that Gaza is an island and nothing can reach the island. It's not an island at all.
No one assumes that Gaza is an island. And I think I can say with some confidence that Israel is in control of the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing now.
No.
It's also not the only. It's also, of course, not the only way into Gaza. So why would Israel be preventing?
Never had. The Rafah crossing is an Egyptian-run.
But there's 2 sides to it, and there are lots of other ways into Gaza, which Israel, under your own analysis, would appear to be preventing passage through.
Are the underground tunnels built by
No, there's lots of gates going into Gaza from elsewhere. You can get in there from Israel without going through a tunnel. So why would that not be able to happen? Do you think?
But also you can get in there through the crossing and through the tunnels.
So again, I mean, today is the day that Israel stands accused of all manner of war crimes, and you want to talk about Egypt.
No.
I think you should just Google, before we continue, you should just Google Rafah and control and just clarify what the situation has been since, I think, May the 7th. Just in the interests of illumination. Folayan is in Sevenoaks. Folayan, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello,
I think it's a great conversation you're having here. Thank you. I think it's also a very British thing to complain about the government of the day.
Well, I think most countries do it as well, don't they, if they're allowed to?
Yeah. I don't support the Tories, and I'm not very keen about Labour either. But the one thing that I know for sure is that 49 days later, we ran to this guy, and it's just been bashing from time and over again. Your handlers asked me questions about what he's done right. I do agree he has a lot of wrong policies in place, a lot of things that I wouldn't support. For example, the Rwanda saga, I'll call that. That's not great. Also having to get, skilled help and then choosing not to bring their dependents into the country because that doesn't make any sense. No. But when I look at the arguments, I just feel like, he's inherited a government that obviously hasn't been doing well. I know he's a conservative, but at the same time, I mean, what he's done what he can do, and he's doing that now. So I don't expect that he's the best candidate for everyone. But yes, he has done things that has helped.
What? And, as Prime Minister, not as Chancellor, what has he done?
As Prime Minister, right,
and also
now,
the things he did as Chancellor didn't help. We've got to be. I mean, furlough did most people, but Eat Out to Help Out was an absolute disaster. Biologically, medically.
You said followed it. Yeah. Why don't you give him the credit for follow? I
just did twice. So what's he done as Prime Minister?
It's always skewed.
I just said furlough was brilliant.
As Prime Minister, he's. I mean, we've been talking about the boats, and obviously there's been a lot of distractions in the last couple of months.
Yes.
I mean, James, listen, I'm not on Rish's side.
I know. I'm going to let you speak, but at the end of what you're saying now, I'm going to ask you again what he's done as Prime Minister that's good.
Well, there's inflation that's halving at the moment.
That's nothing to do with him.
Well, it's getting better.
There's nothing to do with him, unless, of course, it was...
Well, it's under his government, right?
No, because it went up. So was it entirely his fault when it went... Are you saying that everyone who has had to sell their house because they can't afford their mortgages, that was all on Rishi Sunak?
Was that under Rishi Sunak?
Yes.
Or was that like Liz Truss's...
He was Prime Minister when the tide went out.
No.
Inflation, mate, you can't claim...
He inherited that.
You can't claim that he brought inflation down.
To him 49 days after. I'm not a Tory.
I'm going to let you talk, and then I'm going to let you talk, and then I'm going to point out how silly you are
about these things. But he inherited these things.
No, he didn't.
You've given him the responsibility to run the government.
Rishi Sunak stated that rocketing inflation had nothing to do with him. It was all about international factors.
Is, we're going to get.
Don't change the subject. Don't change the subject. Do not change that. Don't you dare change the subject.
We're going round and round in circles.
No, we're not.
It's going to happen with Keir Starmer.
We're not going round and round in circles. You're launching a skeet into the sky, and I'm blowing it to smithereens with my 12 ball.
We go on and on and on and on. But what do you want him to do?
I want you to tell me. I want you stop talking and let me interrupt you. For heaven's sake. I want you to tell me what he's done as Prime Minister that is impressive. And you can't have inflation because he literally told you that he has no control over inflation when it went through the roof. So what else is left?
No, but I'm just asking, has that gotten better under his government?
No, I'm asking what he's done that you celebrate, not what has happened. You might as well talk about the weather, although that obviously hasn't worked out for him very well this week either.
So, wait 1 second. I'll just give you a quick explanation on how it affects me personally.
No, you won't. Right? You will tell me what he's done as Prime Minister that we should all be celebrating.
But that's what I'm trying to explain, right?
Well, you're not doing a very good job. I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm late for the break.
Look at the support for Ukraine, for example.
Yes.
That's happened.
Yes.
Right? That's one. Look at the fact that, personally, I'm getting more money because of the reduction of NI. That's happened under his government.
There you go. You got one. We got there in the end. A reduction in national insurance. Why didn't you just say that in the first place? We could have spared everybody all that toing and froing. A reduction in national insurance. Vote Sunak. James is in Durham. James, what would you like to say?
I'm delighted that he's back, if I'm honest. I think it gives people another option because, quite frankly, looking at Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, I wouldn't really fancy voting for either of them.
Well, you don't live in Clacton, so you've already had a option in your constituency to vote for reform.
Correct, yes, but it wasn't with Nigel at the helm. I think.
So what does that change, do you think?
I suppose he gives a bit of the Boris factor. I wasn't a fan of Boris at sort of
then
the
why would you want the Boris factor then?
Because he's backing Britain.
Who is?
Nigel.
How?
Nigel. He's putting the British values there first. And
so can you talk? I love that phrase. I like it a lot, actually, James. Can we go through what you think they are?
Yeah. So if I go on holiday to Dubai.
No, I want British values, not theoretical holidays.
That.
So what are British values?
This is what I'm about to say. If you let me finish.
Of course.
If I go to Dubai, I respect Muslim laws. I will fully respect it. You don't drink in public. You're not allowed to walk around with your top off if you go through the hotel lobby. But I find it funny that you're getting a lot of people that are coming over here who don't want to follow the British values of respect, looking after the society, looking after your home. They're coming across and wanting to change our rules
for example,
how we live. Well, I think Nigel's pretty...
And which rules? Give me an example of a real person trying to change a real rule.
Well, you look at Sadiq Khan. He's implementing a lot of rules that a lot of his Muslim voters are wanting.
Like what?
The one in Sharia law.
Sorry, Sadiq Khan has introduced Sharia law?
No, he would back Sharia law.
Where do you get that claim from, mate?
He said it.
You think Sadiq Khan has said that he wants to introduce Sharia law?
He would back it.
Okay, what do you think?
If that was on the table.
What do you think Sharia law is?
I'm not going to get into that. You know what Sharia law is.
Well, I know that on things like divorces and domestic disputes, some people are happy to have their cleric, if you like, sit in a form of adjudication, but that can't be what you're objecting to. So what is it you think Sadiq Khan has publicly backed that you're troubled by?
No, I'm saying that Sadiq Khan would back Sharia law.
Yes, but what do you mean by the phrase, in that context, what do you mean by the phrase Sharia law? Because if you're saying that he would back something, I don't know, like chopping people's arms off for shoplifting, then you'd have to be able to provide some evidence, wouldn't you?
But okay, we'll go back a stage.
No, let's just pick off. Let's just deal with one bit of the conversation at a time. The claim that Sadiq Khan. I mean, all you've talked about is Muslim. So when you say British values,
yes,
you don't mean freedom of religion.
No. Anyone can.
You don't mean freedom of
religion.
Worship. You don't mean freedom of expression.
Absolutely fine.
And you don't mean democracy, because Sadiq Khan, of course, is the elected mayor of London 3 times.
Which
so what are the British values?
Very odd in my opinion.
Well, of course it's odd in your opinion, because your opinions are based on falsehoods and misunderstandings. For example, Sadiq Khan supports Sharia law. So let's just pick up on where that idea took seed in your mind or your memory.
So Sadiq Khan is a Muslim.
Yes.
So, of course, he would want Sharia law because it acts as a code for living that all Muslims should adhere to.
Oh, I see.
Including
so you've got so there is absolutely no recorded evidence of Sadiq Khan saying what you're saying.
Well, no, he has
but
said...
This is what all Muslims believe.
Yes, but why? This is a Christian country.
But that's freedom of religion, then.
But it's not. You can have the right to prayer, but why should we introduce a law?
But no one is introducing that. This is the thing that you're going to have to, I guess, either stop saying this or provide some proof.
I have. If you want to, I can. If I had the time, I'd find the clip of him.
Take all the time you want.
I'll send that clip in.
No, stay on the. Don't go now. Just tell me when it was, what he said, what, and what you think he meant by Sharia law, and what it is you're scared of.
I'm scared at the fact that we are talking about introducing a Muslim law.
No,
Christian
James, only you are talking about that.
No, I mentioned
I have Sadiq Khan on this programme every month for the last God knows how many years, and he's never once mentioned this. You've been on for 2 minutes and you can't shut up about it. So where on earth are you getting this evidence from?
You're the one who's spinning this now.
Mate, I just need to warn you that everyone can hear you.
Absolutely.
Right. So where is your proof, or where did you get the idea that... I mean, it's supposed to be a conversation about Nigel Farage representing British values.
And Yes, and that's what I was getting onto. So when you asking me about,
we can't get onto that yet because we just need to establish when and where Sadiq Khan spoke out. I mean, he's been mayor of London for years. Why hasn't he introduced it?
Because I imagine he would have very great troubles introducing it.
Well, that would be one answer to the question. The more obvious one is that he's got absolutely no desire to do so whatsoever, which is the point at which you proved to me that he does.
It was a post that was going around social media, which had a quote alongside of Sadiq Khan saying that he quoted that they are trialling the law in 3 of London's boroughs right now.
Yeah,
and they will roll it out in the remaining 30 years.
What research did you do into that social media post?
It was on the Daily Mail.
No, but what checks did you do on it?
Well, how can you check something when?
Right, do you want me to show you?
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, which I promise you isn't patronising. But do you know what Reuters is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so an internationally respected news organisation.
Yep.
So while I've never heard this claim about Sadiq Khan before. I'm 99.999% confident that it's complete rollicks, right? And the only time I ever hear things like this is when people tell me that Nigel Farage defends British values, and I push them for some proof. I push for some proof or some evidence or some explanation. And you tell me that, for example, Sadiq Khan, I don't know what this has got to do with Nigel Farage, but hang on, because I'm just teaching you how to do fact checks. All right? So you tell me that the Mayor of London wants Sharia law to be imposed in London, and you mention a social media meme or quote, and I can find while talking to you, this isn't the BBC, I've done it all myself while talking to you. In fact, people watching on YouTube will be able to watch the process of me just simply Googling a few of the words you've said in this conversation. And up pops Reuters from July the 1st, 2020, saying, fact check, the Mayor of London did not say Sharia law is being imposed in London. Let me read some of it to you. Social media users are sharing a quote attributed to the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, implying that Sharia law is being implemented in London. This claim is false. The Mayor of London's press office has confirmed that the quote, which misspells Sharia, is fabricated. Posts showing the quote alongside a picture of Khan have hundreds of shares on Facebook, including you, I imagine, right? The quote attributed to Khan reads, "We are trialling Sharia law in 3 of London's boroughs right now. We will then roll it out in the remaining 30 next year."
Correct.
I mean, it's illiterate, James.
What? So you're saying that was on Reuters that was proved to be wrong?
And it's false.
Okay, well, I'll do what politicians can't do and accept that.
But look how much you've built on it.
But equally, that still doesn't change my opinion of that when you're asking me about the British values, there still is a lot of talk about Sharia law.
Right. Well, there's a lot of talk about, I don't know, anti-vax rhetoric.
Correct.
There's a lot of talk about lots of things. That's freedom of speech, isn't it?
It is freedom of speech.
But you're not opposed to freedom of speech because you're in favour of British values.
Absolutely.
But not all speech should be free.
No, there's a difference. Freedom of speech seems to be one-sided, very one-sided.
Okay, so who doesn't have freedom of speech then?
I'd probably say the white working class man.
What do you want to say that you can't say? You can say it to me, I promise. I'll protect you.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, how do you know that I'm white? You've just assumed that there.
Okay, are you?
I am, yes. But
okay. Let's carry on then. What's the thing you can't say that you wish you could?
No, what I'm saying is, when you're on about British values.
No, that was you. I'm waiting for you to tell me what they are. I'm not going on about them.
No, but you were asking me, and then you're saying in terms of how it's not sort of getting out there and freedom of speech. Well, how come? I'm not a Tommy Robinson fan, but the media was reporting that there was only.
Why aren't you a Tommy Robinson fan?
I mean, I agree with some of his points, but the way that he goes about it, it probably doesn't help.
What points do you agree with?
that we're losing societies.
But we've just established that your main reason for being fearful of Islam is completely false.
I never said that was my main concern.
What's your main concern then?
My main concern is that we, as working class British citizens, are losing a lot of our...
Lots of working class British citizens are Muslim.
And I haven't said anything against that. You're spinning words.
I'm not.
It's a bit like when Donald Trump
I'm just saying, how can you be talking about Muslims and working class British people as if they're different? As if they're different.
I'm not.
Right. So what is the stuff you agree with Tommy Robinson about then? And I do want you to say the stuff you feel that white working class people aren't allowed to say. What sort of thing are we talking about here?
So I'll go back to earlier what you were saying about the boats coming across and what Nigel Farage has been saying.
No, I want you to tell me what you think you can't say.
I'm leading on to that. If you'd let me finish. So,
it's 11:33. I do want to talk to you for a bit longer, but just move on to it as quickly as you can, James.
No, absolutely. So,
thank you.
Tommy Robinson, he's obviously up there agreeing that we're allowing too many illegal immigrants into the country. We're allowing an army of men to come across.
Right.
There's no women
who's not allowed to say that then?
People get branded different things if you say that.
You're always going to get branded something. I get branded lefty, loony, liberal. I mean, I think they showed a picture of me at Tommy Robinson's rally and encouraged everybody to boo. If you say stuff in public, James, then people say stuff back to you. But you were telling me about the things. You were telling me about the things that you're not allowed to say. You weren't telling me about being branded.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say that we're having too many people come across.
But you just did.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can you not be allowed to say the thing that you just said?
Because then you're shamed for it, saying, "Oh well, we need to help them out."
Mate, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, and the Reform Party are all saying that there are too many people coming into this country from overseas. So what is it that you feel...
But the Conservatives and Labour won't do anything about it.
No, but we're talking about them not being allowed to say it. I just want to get to the bottom. In the same way your claim about Sadiq Khan and Sharia law, we got to the bottom of that, didn't we?
We did.
And it was complete crap, wasn't it?
Well, yes.
So now let's try now to get to the bottom of the idea that you're not allowed to say there are too many people coming here.
Because you have the left media who are saying, but we need to welcome them in.
Yeah, but that's freedom of speech as well. So you're allowed to say there's too many, and other people are allowed to say, no, there's not. Just nail me where that problem is for you personally.
We're spending £6 million a day on these illegal immigrants. £3 billion a year.
Yes, and what's the bit you're not allowed to say?
They're coming across.
Yes.
They're getting mobile phones. They're put into 5-star hotels.
Well, let's look at that then. Let's look at the 5-star. Shall we look at the 5-star hotel thing then?
They're in 5 stars.
No, let's look at that. Let's look at that. Let's look at the 5-star hotel. The illegal immigrants in 5-star hotels. Where are they? And where? No. Let's go back again. Actually, where did you hear that?
The news.
You heard it on the news. Which news?
Yes. Various outlets.
Okay, and where are the hotels?
You've got the one which is barricaded down. Is it in Plymouth?
Mate, you don't barricade 5-star hotels. They cost about £400 a night. What would all the other guests say? That can't be a 5-star hotel, can it?
The government are booking up whole hotels. This is the thing. They're barricaded by the police because of protesters.
Yeah, but they cease to be hotels when they become asylum centres. They used to be hotels. It's just a name that's given to a building. But I want to focus on the 5-star bit. So can you name a 5-star hotel where illegal immigrants are accommodated?
Yeah, let's have a look, shall we?
Yeah.
If that's the case. So, news article here. Thousands of asylum seekers and channel migrants are living in 4- and 5-star luxury at British taxpayers' expense.
Where's that?
One of the 4 hotels used to be a house.
Where is the article?
This is on The Sun.
And where? Just finish that sentence there. One of the hotels used to be.
One of the high-end, rated in the top brackets, detonating class, and some high-end resorts nationwide are booked for months.
Yes.
Home Office officials are sitting refreshing.
So the 5-star hotel we're looking for.
So we've got a 4-star hotel, which is the Great Hallingbury Manor in Essex.
And you think that is still a 4-star hotel? That is literally taking guests alongside asylum.
Because the
so
government...
So it's not a 4-star hotel anymore. If you stayed there, you'd be sharing a room, you'd be told what meals you were having, you wouldn't have access to the facilities that were put in place for guests because most of them would have been closed. It's a bit like, what's the nearest hotel to you, where you are now, James, in Durham? What's it like?
That's probably the Premier Inn is probably the closest.
Okay, well, I was in a Premier Inn at the weekend, so imagine that we took over that Premier Inn tonight and we turned all the rooms into dormitories. We put 2 sets of bunk beds in every room. We got rid of the menu and decided what we'd be serving up every morning and every evening. You'd have a very limited amount of choice, if you like, to what food was available. You certainly wouldn't be able to avail yourself of the bar facilities or anything like that. But the building in which this was happening used to be the Premier Inn. We'd maybe even leave the sign outside that says Premier Inn. Would you describe the people staying there in those bunk beds as staying in the Premier Inn?
Yes.
Oh, well, then you've got me bang to rights, because it's no longer the Premier Inn, according to all of the definitions that gave it that title, in any way, in exactly the same way that building over there that was once a 5-star hotel and is now an asylum centre is not a 5-star hotel anymore. Do you see that?
Well, okay, so let me flip it round to you. So say you book every single room in the Premier Inn.
Yeah.
Just for you. Is it still a hotel?
Yes.
Exactly. So what's the difference from the government fully block booking a hotel and then the housing?
Because the hotel that I'm staying in is the same as it was last year. It hasn't been turned into an asylum processing centre. We're going to run out of time, and the hotel you've just described costs £48 a night, I'm told. So it's not exactly...
It's probably a lot cheaper than what the government's paying.
Yeah, maybe. So the question then becomes, if you know that the stuff about Sharia law was completely nonsense, you know that there is not a single asylum seeker in this country living in 5-star luxury. They may be, although we failed to find a single one. They may be in a building that used to be a 5-star hotel. And we know that everything you've said about Muslims, essentially, or
I haven't said any... No, you're spinning that.
Okay, right. Scratch that last bit then. Just the stuff. Let's concentrate on the stuff about Sadiq Khan and Sharia law and nothing about Muslims and the nonsense about the 5-star hotels. Can you tell me in a sentence or two why, when you put the phone down, you're still going to believe what you believed when you rang in?
Yes, because you've seen it on the... Well, I suppose maybe being on the left and in the media might not see it as much. But
we're talking about you. You're going to, because we've established 2 things you believe are not true, and now you're going to put the phone down, and we're going to say goodbye, and you're still going to believe what you believed when you rang in. And if you could help me out as someone on the left in the media who doesn't know what the real world is like, if you want to put it like that, that might be helpful. Why will you still believe the stuff that you now know isn't true?
Because there's still areas of the United Kingdom that even the police are scared to go to.
What are those areas?
You've asked me in one sentence.
Yeah, but just give me a couple of examples of those areas.
Oldham.
The police are scared to go to Oldham.
No, there's the streets in Oldham. There's streets in Bradford. There's streets in Birmingham that the police.
Why are they scared to go there?
Because they're outnumbered.
By who?
The people that live there.
Well, the police are outnumbered by the people who live everywhere, James. On your street, the police are outnumbered by the people who live there. So who do you mean when you say the police are outnumbered?
But who
were they outnumbered by?
The foreigners that live there.
The foreigners that live there?
Yes.
How do you know they're foreign?
I mean, don't play that. You know they are. It's these areas where they've been swamped. They're not British anymore. They don't follow the British values, and this is the thing.
And we're back to where we started. What were the British values that aren't being followed? And everything you said turned out to be false. But you're going to go away convinced that these tropes, these lies, these racist stereotypes are all true. But I've got to go to the news.
Thank you. They're not stereotypes.
No. They're all, you've got the proof that they're true, but it goes to a different school, right?
Right.
Thomas Watts has your headlines. Talat is in Kingswood in Surrey. Talat, what would you like to say?
Well, I think Richie managed to get his message across that Labour's going to cost you $2,000 more. It might be a lie, it might be this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day,
no, it's not. There's no might be about it. It's a blatant lie, as established by the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury.
Sure, most people, James, do not go into the Permanent Secretary's edict or read letters, etc. Most people are busy doing other
the kind
things,
of people that tune into a political debate are going to be at least vaguely aware of what's being reported in the political,
missed it, James, for example.
the political media this morning.
Well, you missed it, for example.
No, I missed the debate, yes, but I've read the letter to you already this morning, so I'm a bad egg. So the people that watched the debate are likely to be sufficiently engaged to be aware of the letter, aren't they?
That may be so, but the point I'm going to make, because I was trying to make, was that most people would have come away from listening to that thinking Labour may cost us £2,000 per year more. And that, I think, will have hit home.
Yes, so did Natasha. But that's why I'm interested in, now they know it's a lie, will they, as with Brexit or as with Boris Johnson, will they, even though they've been given all the evidence that it's a lie, will they continue to cling to it?
Well, of course they will, because at the end of the day, people are shallow, I'm afraid, when it comes to...
you don't need to be rude. The difference...
No, I'm not being rude.
You are. You just call people shallow. That's rude. But the difference is, I think people really wanted Boris Johnson's lies to be true. Why would anybody want Rishi Sunak's lies to be true?
No, you're missing the point of it.
No, I'm really not. I'm making the point. So the question is this. People really wanted Brexit lies and Boris Johnson's lies to be true. Why would anybody want Rishi Sunak's lies about Labour to be true? Anybody neutral? Why would they want it to be true? Because in order to cling to a lie after you've been given the evidence that it's a lie, you need to want it to be true, like our caller from Durham yesterday with the Muslims. He wants it to be true. So why would anybody want it to be true that Labour is going to cost them £2,000?
Because people know deep down that the socialists, i.e. Labour...
we got there in the end. So exactly, you're just describing what you want to be true rather than what is actually true. So you're saying, I know it's a lie, but I love it because some people will fall for it. You could have said that. You could have said that up front, mate, and saved us all at least 4 minutes. Paul's in Tower Hamlets. Paul, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. Yes, I mean, I did watch this debate last night, and I watch all politics with, or at least listen to it with a massive pinch of salt. Now, not to say that I am a Labour voter. That was certainly the way I was looking. But after last night, I'm watching Keir sort of squirm. Given that this letter's come out this morning, I don't know if I'm convinced enough after the lack thereof showmanship, I suppose, from Keir, to put my support in him. Rishi's been, and the Conservatives have been very questionable over the last 14 years. But there was some definitive plan that Rishi was able to spit out. Whether it comes to light or not, I'm not sure.
What I didn't see it. What was that?
Well, for example, I mean, just picking up off of what one of your researchers asked me about a plan. I mean,
what was your favourite bit of it?
I suppose my favourite bit in both parties, I suppose.
Because you said Sunak had a clear plan, and I didn't see it. So what was the favourite bit of the clear plan?
Sorry, that's what you're saying. My favourite bit. Sorry, no. There was mention of the Rwanda plan, right? Now everyone's got their back up about this, or in some form or another.
He's had that plan since he became Prime Minister, and nothing's happened.
Well, nothing's happened, but it is going to happen. At least that, with the conversation that was held last night.
It's probably not.
Well,
otherwise they'd have called the election later and had it after it had happened. So, I mean, you watched the debate last night. You thought that Rishi Sunak had a clear plan, and your favourite bit of it was the Rwanda plan that has already failed.
Well, I say the Rwanda plan. It was just what I grabbed onto. I mean,
pick something else then, because I mean, to be fair, it's important that we give you plenty of time because most people have been quite critical of Rishi Sunak. And you heard him offer up a clear plan. and Starmer apparently didn't. So I'm just putting some flesh on the bones of what that plan is. So it can't be Rwanda, can it? Because that plan has already failed.
Well, I'm of the opinion. I think that he will pull the Rwanda plan into touch. I think ultimately in the next couple of weeks / months.
He's already said he won't do it in the next couple of weeks. He's already said it won't happen before the election.
I mean, if we're going to picture over the space of a couple of weeks or a couple of months,
I'm just repeating your words back to you. So I mean, let's presume that Rwanda. Let's presume Rwanda. Okay.
So let's circle back to last night's debate where Rishi.
I didn't think we'd left it. Had we?
A multitude of different concerns.
Yes.
Gave answers.
For example.
You're going to have to forgive me because I can't pull an example.
Can I just, for the benefit of people listening, we didn't ring you, did we, Paul? You did ring into this programme to tell us about all of the plans and the clear answers that Rishi Sunak gave. And I, perhaps very rudely...
I didn't, actually. To be fair, I actually didn't. That wasn't the intent of my call. The intent of my call was really to say that maybe possibly swayed to go and vote potentially Conservative after the lack thereof.
And then you started giving me your reasons, and I asked you for some examples, and you've apologised for not having any. I think a lot of people listening are going to struggle.
That is an apology for being on the spot.
Well, you're not on the spot, mate. It's a phone-in show. You said, I really liked these things, and I said, what things?
Come on, let's be fair. I'm sat here with nothing in front of me, and I wanted to talk to you earlier, and I've been here for a while. Now, I appreciate what you're saying. Ultimately, I'm not giving you much of an answer right there and then. But from the debate, now let's go back to last night, and this letter, it is concerning hearing that about the Conservatives. Absolutely. It all appears to be nonsense. But...
Never gets old. Aidan's in Colwyn Bay. Aidan, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello.
I think that Biden has some pressure to say something about the situation, and it's taken this long for him to react in that way. And meanwhile, as you already said, they're supporting Israel financially with weapons and things. I think that there was talk at the time, and I can't have a clue whether it's true, about it possibly of being a false flag in that they let Hamas in the first place to use it as a reason to attack.
It's going to be one of those hours, is it? I mean, there's absolutely no a possibility of it having been a false flag. There are certainly criticisms of Netanyahu for failing to have been properly prepared and indeed, I mean, having a historical comfort with the existence of Hamas because they, like him, remain dedicated to opposing a two-state solution. Perhaps you misspoke, but the idea that it was a false flag is profoundly obnoxious and borderline anti-Semitic, of course. Matthew in Nottingham. Matthew, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say, James, that I think the media, I don't want to get too personal because I don't want to direct it specifically towards you, but I think a lot of the media are being dishonourable themselves here. I think you're trying to use anything you can to get at Rishi Sunak, and I think it's dishonourable that you're trying to use the D-Day celebration to do it. I served myself. I did 2 tours of Afghanistan, so I think I have a voice here, and I think you're using it.
Well, I understand your point, but speaking of voices, I'm just going to let you hear what some veterans in Normandy at the moment had to say about it earlier this morning.
I've lost all faith in him because they're all our fallen.
And you're getting upset about that?
Yeah.
And some of you were telling me earlier you're Conservatives normally, and does this upset you?
This debacle yesterday, that was outrageous.
Yeah.
But, what can you do?
And Tom, RAF veteran, what do you think?
Well, I think he should have stopped there and saw the shore out. To leave a service early, I think, is very disrespectful, especially for our lost comrades, and the veterans who are at the service must feel a bit let down. I mean, it's just not on.
Yeah.
But I find that's quite a lot with many politicians because they haven't served in the armed forces, so they don't realise the consequences, loss that we feel.
Okay.
Therefore, I think what he did was very, very respectful and disrespectful.
You put the other side of the argument, Matthew.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think, no disrespect, but a lot of the media that are jumping all over
I'm talking
this
about them. I'm talking about them because what the media has done in this case is give them a voice.
Well, no, of course, everybody's entitled to a view, and my view is the alternate one. Yes. And in this case, I'm saying that I think you're using it to punch him in the face continuously.
But what about them? What are they doing? What are they doing?
Well, at the end of the day, that's their view. They're entitled to say that if they want to, but I disagree with them. I do profoundly disagree with what they're saying, and I respect their service.
Which bits do you disagree with? So, I mean, what words would you use to describe the decision to go home early?
I would say the decision was wrong.
So what do you disagree with?
He's apologised.
Well, you heard. We've just listened to his apology. We've just listened to his apology. He didn't say.
He's right.
He didn't.
Judge him on his record.
Okay.
Judge him on his record. That's my view.
What would we look at first?
I would say look at the fact that what he said about the Veterans Affairs and the minister in cabinet under him, that's a fantastic move to put somebody in that place, especially Johnny Mercer being involved in it. It's fantastic. He's really got involved.
But Johnny Mercer has said that it was a terrible mistake that Rishi Sunak...
Yeah, I've said it's a mistake, but he's apologised.
So what are you disagreeing on? So you're saying we should just move on then because he's apologised?
I'm saying you shouldn't continually pound him in the face continuously for the next 3 days over it or the next 24 hours.
Why not?
He's apologised. It's a mistake.
Why not?
We move on. Because he's apologised.
No, but why not?
Because he's apologised. He said he made a mistake, and I think that's fair enough.
But why shouldn't the story continue to be reported for the next? What are you worried about?
I'm not worried about it.
So why don't you want the story to be reported then continuously?
Because he's apologised, and
I know that he's apologised, and we also report the apology. So why not carry on reporting?
So now leave it alone.
No.
Well, that's your call.
Thanks. And that was yours. Andy's in Leipzig. Andy, what would you like to say?
Hi. So I try not to repeat myself. I respect your researcher.
No, you can do. No one heard that except the researcher. But your phone line's gone a bit funny, Andy. If you could just try and sort that out, I'd be grateful.
I've turned the speaker off. Is that any better?
Yes. Right. Let's crack on.
Right, yeah, okay. So, I mean, I live in Leipzig, which is in Saxony in eastern Germany. The AfD won. They actually won in eastern Germany for the European parliamentary election. So, overall in Germany, they were second. But in eastern Germany, in all 5 eastern German states, they came first.
Did particularly well among young people as well, which, again, perhaps naively, I find particularly shocking.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I mean, I'm from the UK, obviously, and I'm living over here as an expat immigrant. Now, I listened to Radio 4 this morning where the presenter, I can't remember her name, had an opportunity to talk to the vice chair of the AfD in Berlin. And what did she do? First thing, typical BBC, straight on.
Okay, mate. With respect, I can listen to Radio 4 because I live in London. You're in Leipzig, and I'm looking for perspectives from Germany, not critiques of the BBC.
You can listen to BBC Radio 4 abroad as well.
I know, but I'm trying to... Crikey, what, do you want it in words of one syllable? I'm trying to hear perspectives that I can't get in London. So you're in Germany watching the German election, and you can tell me things about it that I can't really get from following British media. Okay. And so telling me what you heard on British media this morning is a bit unhelpful.
Let me mention 3 things then, shall I? First of all, the AfD is not exactly a hard right-only organisation, but it's getting attacked by the establishment in the same way that the Brexit movement was. When the liberal media elite couldn't stand Brexit and the idea of leaving the European Union, they started to call Brexit extreme and anti-migrant and all that. So
well, it was, wasn't it? You saw Nigel's breaking point poster. I mean, even Dominic Cummings has confessed that without the sort of nativist anti-immigration... What are the big policies that they stand on that are not anti-immigrant and anti-immigration?
What, the AfD?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's say 2 things. First of all, if you notice, they won in Eastern Germany.
No, I'm just asking, apart from being anti-immigrant, what are the big tickets?
The AfD started as an anti-Euro party, not an anti-immigrant party. It was against It was against Germany bailing out the Greeks in the Euro crisis.
Yeah, but that's not what people... That went very well, and that's not what people voted for yesterday. So apart from being anti-immigrant, what are the big sort of policy platforms that the AfD has?
Well, when you say apart from being anti-immigrant, that covers quite a few areas, doesn't it? Because it covers...
Yeah, well, I'm just the anti-migrant party.
Okay, well...
Apart from being... I'm reading that in the Daily Mail. If you don't know, there's no shame in it. I don't know either. But apart from being anti-migrant, what are their policies? What are the big policy platforms?
They're generally anti-federal European Union. That's one of their things too.
But they're not. They don't want to leave the European Union, do they?
There's discussion about it, but
they changed their mind after Brexit. So again, I don't want to sound like I'm hectoring you, but again, if you don't know the answer to this, that's absolutely fine because I don't either.
Answer, but you
go on
seem
then.
to not want to spend more than 2 seconds listening to the
Apart
answer.
from being anti-migrant, what do they stand for?
I just told you they're anti-EU, they're anti-federal.
But they're not anti-EU because after Brexit, they decided they wanted to stay in.
They're in favour of ending the war in Russia and Ukraine. They don't.
Okay, there we go. So they want to end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And again, in the week after D-Day commemorations, that seems to me at least a little odd. Do you understand why they want to do that?
I do understand it, because I also don't believe that pouring weapons into a war is generally the way to end it. I think the best thing to do is get sort of negotiated agreement. At the end of the day, that's the only way to end the war, isn't it?
Okay, so Putin talking points and anti-migrant. I'm more troubled or confused about how this could be appealing to people, particularly perhaps in Eastern Germany, who well, maybe that's why. Maybe those historic links with the Soviet Union run a heck of a lot deeper than people over here can fully understand, Andy, which is the kind of thing I was hoping you might be able to explain to me rather than critiquing Radio 4. Sam's in Tooting. Sam, what would you like to say? Back to the broader question of disillusionment.
I actually think it's more to do with how obvious the politicking of everybody is right now. So I think that politics is a really dirty game. And actually the aim is to get into power. And that is always the case with parties across the board throughout time. But right now, it just feels so obvious that both parties are doing it. So we're obviously disillusioned with the current governing party. But then the opposition, it feels like they are doing every move they make is damage limitation and ensuring they get as many votes as possible. And that's fine. That is what you're supposed to do. But it's so obvious that it makes you think, well, what's the belief system here? And you've seen that from the other side for so long. It feels like that's where someone says they're all the same. Well, they are, because they're all playing the same game. They all want to get into power, and that's what you need to do. But that's where it really drives home. It's like, well, what does anyone really think? Do they just want to secure power? And it makes you very disillusioned with it.
So you're casting inspiration as the opposite of disillusionment, aren't you? So because there is nothing to be inspired by, disillusionment sets in.
Exactly. It becomes so obvious, the moves that they make, the way that they speak, like not answering anything, but you see it on both sides, where you see Keir Starmer in the most recent debate essentially not saying anything about what they're planning to do in the future. But then you talk about, I can't remember what the name of the minister went out and said to every question, well, Labour have admitted that doing this to public schools...
Emily Thornberry.
Yes, Emily
Thornberry. What's the weather like today? It was Richard Holden, the chairman of the Conservative Party. What are you having for tea? Emily Thornberry. What's the weather like today? Emily Thornberry. What would you like to say about your own recent behaviour? Emily Thornberry. I mean, that clip... Well, that I would almost cite, Sam, as a refutation of what you're saying, because that is an example. They're not all like that. I mean, the reason why, and we might dig that out again, actually, that Richard Holden clip from earlier in the week where he answered every question with the words Emily Thornberry, and the great John Craig finally ran out of patience. That surely works against your point, because that was so extraordinarily... Go on.
They are at that level of desperation.
Yeah, but only he is. Even Grant Shapps isn't as bad as that.
Yeah, sure. He's a terrible performer, and the Tory party has a dearth of talent generally in the political space. But the point is that actually they're at that level of desperation, but then you look over at the other side, and it feels very similar, not to the same level and not to the same degree, but it does feel similar when you're looking at somebody being asked, what are you going to do about this? And you're not being given serious answers. I can't remember who, I think it was the IMF had said that both political parties
IFS,
are not
the
being...
Institute for Fiscal Studies,
Yes,
Paul Lewis, saying that they're both coming up with promises without explaining where the money's going to come from.
Exactly. They're not being honest with us about what the scale of the difficulties is. And the reason they're doing that is because they are politicking. And it is so clear. Everybody sort of has this idea of like this inspirational leader who really truly believes something and really pushes it through. And that's kind of what you think about as the ideal politician, someone who really believes
who would
that.
be
In
on
reality,
that? Who would
they're much grubbier.
Yeah. So what would you want to see then? I mean, I can answer that question a bit in terms of just possibly saying things.
Well, we can bring it back to Brexit,
right,
which I know that's a favourite of the show, right?
Sure.
But we can look at that and
well,
say,
it's crucial to this research,
really...
actually. Absolutely crucial to this research, but not necessarily from my position, which is it was going to be awful and it is awful. What a bunch of chances. But people who thought it was going to be brilliant now are very disillusioned with politicians in general. So it is relevant.
So that's a really clear one where we all know Keir Starmer was the Brexit minister. He wanted the shadow Brexit minister. He is ardently against it, and he is not coming out and saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They're basically not saying anything on it. And everybody watching knows that is because they are playing politics.
I think I'm being held hostage here by my own silo, because the research looks at the dashed Brexit expectations as a source of disillusionment with politics, but you're the second or third caller now to cite disillusionment with the people that opposed it for no longer opposing it, to which you could sort of respond by saying, well, they've lost that battle. Why would they want to relitigate it already?
Because that is the evidence of when you are playing politics. When you know someone holds an ideological position that they really truly believe in, and
but they're pretending not to. That's
exactly.
I don't think this is part of the polling. Actually, I don't think this is a big part of the survey, but it's a big part of my thinking now. Thanks to you and a couple of other callers. You want someone like Nye Bevan, don't you? Really.
There are plenty of other examples as well.
Yeah.
If you think about some of the pledges, for example, and look, I am more left than Starmer. I'm more on the sort of Rayner side. But if you think about some of the pledges he made to the membership when I actually voted for him and Rayner to become the leader and deputy leader, some of those pledges have been dropped that I think are popular and that he does believe in, but they have been dropped on the basis of politicking, and we all know it, and we can all see it.
Sacrificed at the altar of achieving power would be the positive interpretation of that, and the defence would be, I made those promises before Liz Truss drove the country off a cliff, so I can't keep them. I can't keep them now. But Rayner is a good example of what you're describing. Angela Rayner gives pretty direct answers to questions, even if sometimes it embarrasses her colleagues.
And she is definitely one of the politicians who I would say gives me hope.
Joanna, or rather Angela. It's 11:42. That was a pop music reference that I'm increasingly conscious of the fact not everybody's going to get because of my age. What was I talking about yesterday? So I think I was talking to someone who'd never heard of Aha. Can you imagine never having heard of Aha? Oh, what a Gobi desert of a cultural existence you must have led if you've never heard of Morton, Mags and Paul. Sam, great stuff. Thank you. Simon's at Heathrow. Simon, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
I missed the start of the programme. But,
Why?
I gathered you asked people to phone up because they're disillusioned with politicians because they haven't carried through what they could have done with Brexit.
Yes.
So, regarding the immigration thing, we've now, when we was in the EU, we couldn't control who came, how many people came. Anyone from the EU was entitled to come.
Well, that's not true. I mean, this argument is dead now, but we could have done a hell of a lot more than we did, as other countries demonstrated, like Belgium, for example. But we chose not to because of the economic necessity of high immigration. But of course,
what else could we have done then? I thought it was free movement of people.
No, you can have some rules in place with regard to the secure of employment before you come. And I think if the Belgian model holds, you could even lay down some requirements on having capital. You'd have to prove that you had certain levels of capital.
Really? Oh, sorry.
It's all right, mate. It's only 8 years late. It's only 8 years late, Simon.
Say it again.
It's only 8 years late that this penny has dropped, but better late than never, eh?
Well, why didn't we do? I understood that it was free movement of people. So when we left the EU, we can create our own laws and we can stop people coming.
Yeah.
And now they promised us that, and then when we left, the figures have gone up. So that's basically why I've lost trust in
because they keep on coming.
Well, they've gone up even more, haven't they?
Yeah,
so,
the highest ever.
That's the reason I've lost, confidence in the politicians, because we were told one thing and then they don't.
I think there's a lot of. Well, there'll certainly be a lot of Brexit voters out there who feel like you do. You were promised that the numbers would come down. No one ever took the time to explain to you why that was not necessarily either a good thing or an inevitable consequence of Brexit, and you've watched them go up. It's free movement, just to help you. It's free movement of it's free movement of labour, free movement of workers, not free movement of people. So member states, I don't know if this is true of Schengen. I think it is actually, but of course we're not in Schengen, so it doesn't matter. But
so my wife's Latvian, and
your wife's Latvian.
They couldn't stop her from coming. They actually deported her brother because he was homeless, didn't have a job, and was sleeping outside Harrods. When the Olympics come along, they deported him, but they couldn't stop him coming back. He just got the coach back again.
Yeah, well, they couldn't stop him coming back because they can't go through the sort of papers of is Latvia in the EU?
Yeah, what do you mean is Latvia in the EU?
Is Latvia in the EU? I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember. Yeah, so because we weren't imposing that rule, Simon. They could have said, unless you've got a job, or unless you can demonstrate you've got a certain level of savings, you can't come into this country like they would have done in Belgium. But we didn't do that.
He came back. I think they deported him twice. They even put him into.
But we didn't. That wasn't because we were in. That wasn't because we were in the EU. That was because we chose not to impose rules that we could have imposed if we'd wanted to. But the cost of imposing them would have been far, far, far higher than any benefits of keeping people like your brother-in-law out of the country.
Right. Okay. Well, I didn't understand the rules, probably. I just thought...
Wait, you're a Brexit voter. No offence, but none of them understood anything on this particular subject. And it's not your fault. It's because people have been lying to you since the words Nigel Farage first appeared in the British news bulletins.
Oh, okay. How could they stop it? It wasn't free movement of people.
Free movement of labour, not people. Free movement of workers.
Okay, then I did misunderstand it. But
don't feel bad about it. I mean, everyone who voted for Brexit did. So 17 million of you. There's strength in numbers. But the crucial point is it would never have happened anyway because the costs of imposing those sort of rules would have been prohibitive and the benefits of having free movement of labour were immense. So you don't tell millions of workers from continental Europe that they can't come now because of people like your brother-in-law sleeping rough outside Harrods. Do you see what I mean? He's outnumbered to the nth degree by the millions, by people who came here, worked, paid taxes, made big contributions to our economy, and then thanks to your vote in 2016 got told to sod off.
Yeah, he's working now, so he's sorted himself out. He had a bit of problem with drink, but he's okay now. But
I'm glad to hear it.
The other reason was, the laws. We can. I just want to. I like smaller government. For me, the better. So
hang on a minute, because if you wanted to impose those sort of rules that you've just been calling for with regard to foreign people coming here, you'd need a much bigger government.
I mean, as in rather being governed by something that governs the whole of Europe over something that just governs the UK.
Right.
But I just think they're more accountable. When the smaller the government, the more accountable they are.
Okay. So how's that working out for you then?
Well, I mean, it's not very good because they're letting in even more people.
No, I meant on the accountability, because we've been out of the EU for 8 years now. So how's that working out for you?
What do you mean? How's it working out?
On the accountability, we're now governed. We're now governed from where we were never governed from Brussels. But I can't I can't stay here all day. I've got John Curtis waiting to talk to me after the break. So we were never governed from Brussels. But for people who believed that we are now governed from Westminster. How much better are things for you? Do you think?
Well, so you're saying that the laws they made in Brussels we didn't have to follow.
Well, yeah. Which laws are you thinking about now? Which laws are you thinking about?
I'm not that clever, mate.
No, but you can't dislike something that you can't describe. The law that you you really didn't like. Just one law that you.
So you're saying that the laws were passed in by the EU in Brussels had no effect on us.
I'm saying they were also passed here.
No, we're not taking any.
Tell me what law you're talking about. Tell me what law you're talking about, and I'll answer you.
I'm telling you, I'm not that.
Yeah, but there must be one law. If this is your entire political position is based upon the idea that you resent having to follow these laws, you must be able to tell me one law that you resent having to follow.
No, I'm just saying in general.
Yeah, and I'm saying, all right.
You tell me one law that they made that we could have stopped following then.
Clean rivers?
Sorry?
Clean rivers, we've stopped following that.
Well, while we was in the EU?
Yeah, we had cleaner rivers then than we do now.
Oh, I've got an aeroplane going past. So you're telling me,
all right,
telling me that they could have made the laws that they made in the EU. We could have just ignored.
No, mate. I'm asking you which laws you wanted to ignore.
I didn't follow it that closely. I'm not that clever.
Mate. Listen, Simon, you are clever. You must know. You say to me, "I don't like that."
Listen, I'm saying to you.
Oh, this is surreal.
If they made laws in the EU, could we have just ignored it?
Simon, we're not
taking notice of that law.
We were in the EU. We were part of the law-making process. We sat in the Parliament. We wrote the laws, and then
about 1/32 of the EU.
Mate. Look at what Margaret Thatcher achieved with regards to the single market. She practically invented it, Simon.
Okay, Brian.
But you need to. You need to tell me, you need to just, before you go, you've got to have a crack at naming one law that you really, really wanted to be able...
Before I go, how about you telling me that so you just...
it's my show, mate. Come on, I'm very late. I'm late for the break. I just want one law. No, you can't ignore laws that have been enshrined in...
You can't even confirm that...
Mate, it's British law. Simon, they are British laws. That's how the system worked. We are part of...
Oh,
for heaven's sake. Right, final opportunity. Final opportunity.
We could have just ignored the laws.
Yes, like the 48. Yes, the 48-hour working time directive. You could get exemptions from that if you wanted. You wouldn't. If you're a lorry driver or a journalist, you wouldn't have to have a limit on the amount of hours of work that you could do. I have to go to the break, but I just want you, before you go, one law that you really didn't want to have to...
How many times have I got to tell you? I didn't follow it that close.
But you're on national radio complaining about having to follow laws that you can't even name. This is like Groundhog Day. Steve's in Exeter. Steve, what would you like to say?
Well, I think that the downfall of the Conservatives is not because of Brexit. I know you like to blame Brexit on pretty much everything.
No, mate. Just the things that I can use evidence to show that it is responsible for or contributing to.
Your evidence, the downfall of the Conservatives is because of the state of the Parliament.
Right.
You've got.
So why are Labour doing so well then?
Because
they're in the same. They're in the same Parliament.
Labour are doing well because obviously you got the polls wrong with the Brexit vote. So
no, I didn't. I predicted it, Steve.
We'll see what happens.
I literally predicted it. You can find the tapes. But anyway, I just want to examine your thinking here. So the Conservatives are in trouble because of the state of Parliament, to which my response was, well, how come Labour are doing so brilliantly in the same polls when they sit...
At the moment,
hang on, let me finish the question.
Okay.
When they sit in exactly the same Parliament that is responsible for the downfall of the Conservatories.
Conservatives, not Conservatories.
Yeah.
That's what I fit. So basically, it is down to the whole of Parliament.
Yeah.
I can't see Brexit as
no, but just explain to me why it's Parliament and Labour are in it as well.
Okay, because we've got so many corrupt, criminal MPs.
Well,
in
be
that
careful.
Parliament.
We got libel laws there, but you're saying the Conservative Party, the parliamentary Conservative Party, is full of corrupt criminals.
Not just Conservatives.
Right.
Labour, Lib Dems.
Yeah.
Basically, you've got MPs in there who threaten to throw acid in people's faces.
MPs who what? I just got to be careful. I don't want you to libel anybody. And remember,
I'm not libeling anybody. An MP got charged in court, so you're allowed to say it, for threatening to throw acid in a female's face. She's still sat on the bench.
Yeah.
You've got MPs.
But that doesn't explain the collapse in the Conservatives' polling, does it?
Because they've been
We're talking
in power
about
14 years
Steve,
and they haven't delivered anything.
there's no need for us to fall out. We're talking about the collapse in the Conservatives' polling.
Yes,
the Conservative Party's polling. So the behaviour of MPs from other parties is not going to be the reason why the Conservatives have hemorrhaged support. So
no, I know.
So your answer to that question, if we both slow down a bit, your answer to the question of why the Conservatives are hemorrhaging support is the state of Parliament.
Yeah,
but the Labour Party...
If you let me finish...
I'd like you to start, Steve, if you could, because the Labour Party is doing very, very well in the same polls.
They've been in power for 14 years, so whoever's in power gets the chop, okay? They haven't delivered anything. They haven't delivered
Brexit.
All the manifesto promises.
They delivered Brexit.
Well, have they really? I think because they haven't delivered Brexit. They've delivered
They have, it's happened.
No, we've come out,
yeah.
But there's so many caveats to it. There's so many, like what's happened in Northern Ireland, the border down the sea, and
but that was always going to.
European Union.
That was always going to happen. Everybody who paid attention understood that.
It doesn't always happen because there's borders in
because of the Good Friday Agreement. You see.
Yeah, the Good Friday Agreement. They use that as a weapon.
No, mate, that's a treaty.
Parliament, hold on, because of Parliament at the time, you had so many people trying to frustrate it.
Right.
You had Theresa May who didn't even want it. So you had people trying to deliver it who didn't actually really think about it.
But now you're explaining why Brexit has broken the Tories.
No, what I'm saying is the whole of Parliament tried to frustrate the actual withdrawal agreement, which played in the hands of the EU. So we had to sign.
But now you're explaining how Brexit has done so much damage to the Tory party. You came on to explain why it hasn't.
No, it's two separate things.
Yeah.
We're talking about Brexit on that, and the downfall of the Tories is because they've been in power for 14 years, they haven't delivered nothing, and people...
But they delivered Brexit,
whether you think the Labour are the roses, smelling roses, it's the whole of Parliament. Yeah. So they've been in power. So the only reason Keir will get in power is by default. The Brexit people won't vote for him. Labour voters, you can put a rose on a donkey, they'll still vote for them. They will win by default. If they get a lot of MPs, like I know you don't say this supermajority.
So in a sentence, if we could, the Tories are currently hemorrhaging support in the polls because of Parliament.
Because they haven't delivered what they said to do.
What did they say they'd do?
Well,
what's the big thing that you feel that they've let you down on?
Well, the state of the economy.
That's not it, Steve, is it?
Pardon?
We both know what you were about to say then.
What was I about to say?
Brexit, mate.
No, I wasn't going to say Brexit.
Because it got frustrated and they couldn't deliver it, and there's all these caveats, and Theresa May didn't want it, and they frustrated it at every turn.
You just said Brexit was delivered.
Yeah, I know, but you said it wasn't.
No, not in the way I wanted it to deliver.
Exactly. And who didn't deliver it?
Because they were frustrated.
Simple question: who didn't deliver it?
Because it was frustrated.
Who didn't deliver it?
Well, obviously, it was the government in power.
At what party was that?
At what party was that? By Parliament.
At what party was that?
Yeah, it's the Conservatives.
So who didn't deliver Brexit? Who didn't deliver Brexit then?
No, they've got rid of Boris Johnson by a coup. You've got somebody in there who was put in against the members. So if you want to know the members will not vote for Rishi because they didn't listen to the membership. It wasn't a democracy. They put him in there by a coup. So that's why support for them is falling. It's not falling because of Brexit. It's falling because they went against the membership.
Jane's in Wandsworth. Jane, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
I probably am that person that you've spoken about multiple times over the last few minutes. Like, I can see that it's an unfair disadvantage, but I also get really saddened by the whole rhetoric around it because it feels like it's a political move by Labour and it feels like it's the politics of envy. And, I think closing the gap by elevating state sector outcomes is healthy, but I think doing so by hurting private schools in the short term, implementing it very bluntly, I think is the wrong thing to do.
Well, I find the politics of envy historically a very unhelpful phrase, but I mean, it's not politics of envy from me because I taken advantage of private education both as a pupil and as a parent. So where am I coming from on this?
Yeah, I mean, as in, what do you mean that you?
Well, it can't be envy for me, can it? Because I can afford it and I do it. So why am I in favour of this policy then? Because it's a bit of an easy get-out politics of envy. And I think it's complete rollocks. I think it's a commitment to equality while simultaneously refusing to let people like you give advantages to your children that I'm going to deny to my children in an unfair universe. So if it's not politics of envy for me, what is it?
I think, look, I like yourself, I went to private school, but I also went to state school. I'm one of those people that, I went to state school up until I was 14. My parents and my brother.
But I'm just picking up on the politics of envy line, because it can't possibly be politics of envy for me. So what is it?
Yeah. Well, I think that, you want equality and, it's not politics of envy for you. You want equality, and I understand that.
And maybe that's what Keir Starmer wants as well.
I think, he does. And I think all of us do. I do as well. I want that for all children. But I think what worries me is the way that the Labour government are looking to bring this in so bluntly and the effects on...
Well, it's not blunt, is it? Blunt would be to announce abolition. Removing charitable status or insisting that you pay VAT on your school fees in the same way that you pay VAT on your takeaway food, or your eat-in food, rather. It's not exactly a blunt instrument. And the numbers have gone up. They've gone up since the policy was announced.
I'm not sure I would agree with that, but
these are the Department of Education statistics that were published last week.
I think... Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on that. I'd be very surprised if they've gone up. Like, I can tell you right now.
I'm telling you that they have. That's not an opinion, it's counting. The Department of Education published figures up to January of this year, long after the policy was known, and they've gone up by 24,150 pupils across England alone.
Private school applications have?
Yes, private school attendance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that, I find that really surprising, because I know from talking to everyone, we're lucky enough to send, we both work full time, we're lucky enough to send our children.
So did Therese. Therese worked full time. Her husband was a roofer and she was a secretary.
I completely understand that. I completely understand that. I think that, unfortunately in life, and this is unfortunate, and I know this is unfortunate, but they're unfortunately in life, you are going to have people that have more and have people that less, and we can all strive for equality, and we all want equality, and we all want
people who use the phrase politics of envy don't want equality, Jane. They want entrenched privilege, and they want it to be protected.
Yeah, I think I disagree there, because I think that
I'll let the listeners make up their mind.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, can I just, I want to make the comment, what people do fail to realise is that there are people out there, and, I'm sure this won't get sympathy from many people, but the actual living truth of it is that, we've got friends that don't go on holiday, drive a battered old car, can hardly afford the private school fees of their kids, and they literally don't have any of life's luxuries, but they do.
Well, if they get rid of the battered old car, they'll be able to afford get a bicycle. They'll be able to afford the VAT.
Yeah, I think that. I think it's quite sad, really, to make a mockery of their situation. They're doing what they can to try and give their.
So your theoretical friends and their theoretical battered old car shouldn't be mocked.
Yeah, I think,
okay.
I think...
But accusing people who want fairer education in this country of politics of envy, that's absolutely fine.
I don't think...
And when you say we both work hard, what do you think you're saying about parents who can't afford to send their children to private school?
No, everyone works hard. So
why mention it?
And I appreciate that, because a lot of people think it's entitlement. A lot of people think that you're paying private school fees through grandparents and everyone else.
No, but when you say we both work hard, what are you saying about the people who work very hard but don't send their children or can't?
I'm not saying anything about.
Of course you are. So what's it got to do? What's it got to do with the conversation?
What I'm doing is I'm making the point that we're not people that are having our school fees paid for us.
No.
We are trying to.
But would you work less hard if you were?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, then it's not even remotely relevant then to this conversation.
It is, because I'm making the point that we are families that are not having our private school fees paid for us. We're doing our absolute best to try and pay those.
Yeah.
And we're going to, it's going to be very tight for us. It's going to be very tight for a lot of people. And I don't think that...
Well, it's already very tight for a lot of people. And the numbers, as I say, have gone up. So, most of your fears are probably unfounded. But when you say, I work very hard, whether you intend it or not, you are passing judgment on people who don't send their children or can't send their children to private school. But I hope in the course of that conversation you probably realise that. Don's in West Wickham to kick things off. Don, what would you like to say?
Oh, yes. Good morning. Well, basically, I don't trust Starmer. He was a Marxist lawyer, and last election he was supporting Jeremy Corbyn. And then when he became leader, he suddenly changed his tune, so got rid of Jeremy Corbyn, tried to get rid of Diane Abbott, but he seems to have failed in that respect. And, whatever he says, I think, well, what was he saying last time? One time he was telling the truth. The next time he can't be telling the truth of what he actually thinks.
Yes, that makes sense. It's not what you'd call a sort of ringing endorsement of Rishi Sunak, though, what you're telling me. So it's I suppose, more a question, I think, about why you are enthusiastic about the concern. Perhaps you're not, but reasons to dislike Keir Starmer. You could have written a Daily Mail column with that list. So what are the reasons to vote for the Conservatives?
Well, I think it's been pretty tough. Richie's had the COVID thing to deal with, also Ukraine war. Okay, I accept the fact
why are they reasons to vote for the COVID and the Ukraine war are reasons to vote for the Conservatives? Do you think there might be another COVID or another Ukraine war?
No, I'm just saying that I accept the fact that people are probably worse off now than they were when the Tories came into power.
Yes.
But I think that is not the fault of the government. He's had these crises.
What is their fault? What do you think the government has been responsible for over the last 14 years?
Well, I think Boris Johnson was fairly corrupt. I was turned off him. I forget the case now. There was something about someone he supported who turned out to be fairly dodgy, And
you know who his Chancellor was, don't you?
Yeah, I know who his Chancellor was, yeah. But...
So the positive reason to be a Tory voter now in 2024?
Well, I think they're better than Labour. There's only two.
No, I know you do, but that's why I'm asking for the reasons.
Well, you might say that's a negative reason, but nothing is perfect.
No, fair enough. No, it's a choice. You've got to pick one.
Vote Tory. I think I can justify my reasons to myself, logical in my own mind.
Well, that's the main thing, isn't it?
Basically, I don't trust Starmer.
What's a Marxist lawyer?
A Marxist lawyer?
Yes.
Well, he thought the police should be disbanded originally when he started out as a lawyer.
Yes, but that's not something that he's enacted or pursued as a lawyer, is it? That might have been an opinion.
No, well,
so what is it? What's the difference between a Marxist lawyer and a non-Marxist lawyer?
Well, the fact that someone's a lawyer, they can have any number of different political opinions.
Yes, but what's in terms of a lawyer? What would have happened if we had when he was director of public when he was director of public prosecutions? What do you think he did that was Marxist?
Well, I understand when he was director of public prosecutions, so it's been alleged. I can't say this.
Remember, this has to be Marxist. There has to be something Marxist.
Well, he was defending the accused in this case, and the prosecutions didn't take place.
Well, he can't have been defending someone when he was director of public prosecutions, Don.
Well, he was.
So what did he do?
He was the one who decided not to prosecute. Put it that way. I didn't make myself clear.
Are you talking about Jimmy Savile?
Yes, possibly.
Because that's a lie. That's a lie made by Boris Johnson, who you correctly described as being morally corrupt a few moments ago. But let's pretend it's true. How is it Marxist?
Well, I believe he was Marxist because he was sort of very, very extreme left wing.
Yes, but what did he do?
Would you say Corbyn's a Marxist?
What? Well, you need to tell me what you think Marxism is first.
Well, Marxists outside Russia are very left-wing. They believe in disbanding everything, taking over the state, that sort of thing,
Yeah, okay.
I think he was along those sort of lines.
Yeah.
Basically...
But we've got no evidence at all, but we think he's a Marxist.
No, can I just say he seems to flip-flop the whole time.
So he's not a Marxist?
He has done throughout his career.
So he's not a Marxist?
Probably I was wrong to describe him as a Marxist.
It was your main reason for voting Conservative.
Well, I think...
And it was wrong.
Provided with a... Well, OK, I'm fairly old. I remember going right back to when the Labour government under Attlee, we had a financial crisis then. Every Labour government we've had has ended up in a financial crisis.
Right.
So, OK, I'm not saying that the Tories are perfect. Clearly they're not, because
but you don't fancy the alternative. That's absolutely fine, Don, and good luck to you. Mary Jane is in Reading. Mary Jane, what would you like to say?
Hello, hi,
Hello.
James. Yeah, I totally agree with the last speaker. Now, the thing is, we have our son currently in state school, and we are moving him to a private school just because of the numbers they have in his current class and how he struggled in that population class of 32 students in a class for one teacher. So we thought we would work harder as two working parents who are working our butts off.
I know. I just for the record, and I'm not arguing with you, but I can't let that pass. Loads and loads and loads of people, millions and millions of people, work just as hard as you and will never be able to afford to send their children to private school. So there's no relationship between how hard you work and private education. Millions of people who work incredibly hard. Because when you say it, and I know you don't mean it, but when you say it, it sounds to a lot of people as if you're suggesting people who don't send their children to private school don't work very hard. And I know that's not what you mean.
No, not at all in that sense. Is we made that decision, and because of that, we're going to give up a lot to have him private educated, $24,000 a year.
Yes.
And to hear that they're intending to put another 20% on top of that, again, that won't, like the last week, affect the rich people because they have the money already and they're able to, what would 20% difference make for them? Or for people like me...
It's the nibbling at the edges, and it's enough to settle your vote, and presumably your partner's vote as well, and that is it.
Yes.
Where would you be, if in the absence of that policy, what would you be doing?
Labour, I will be voting in the absence of that policy, and because of that, I'm voting the Tories anyways.
Yeah, and that's 2 out of 2. And as I say, Beatrice thinks the position is assailable. I'll read her text out in a moment, but I'm certainly not going to pick a fight with you or argue about that. Andrew's in Lanark. Andrew, what would you like to say?
You said you were looking for who's voting Conservative if it's not rich business owners or people with kids in private school
I didn't say rich business owners. Just the private school point was the first one to come up.
Right.
But you've got a different one, I hope.
It's me. I'm the person you're looking for.
Go on.
And just to help along, just one more point before I start. The guy who was on about Keir Starmer being a Marxist, he's not. What he is, to the core, is a solicitor. Because he'll
I think he was a barrister.
Barrister, I beg his pardon.
That's all right.
He'll represent anybody who will pay him. He can be working for the CPS 1 week, and then before that, he could be a defence lawyer. He doesn't care. No principles. Pay me, and I'll represent you to the best of my ability.
Isn't that true of doctors as well?
I'm talking about representing people who are clearly guilty. Anyway,
I'm talking about treating people who are clearly guilty. Isn't it just the same principle that applies to doctors?
Well, the doctors don't help the people stay out of prison, do they?
No, they help them stay alive.
Well, that's fine. We haven't got the death sentence in this country anymore, so there's nothing wrong with them staying alive.
No, but the cab rank principle that lawyers have to abide by, they have no choice in that process any more than doctors get to choose who they treat. So why is it okay for doctors but terrible for lawyers? All lawyers.
Because I'm not saying it's terrible for lawyers. I'm not judging him.
He's only doing what all lawyers do.
Exactly,
and this is your main reason for voting Conservative. So you must feel. Well, that's what you brought up.
I just wanted to correct the guy saying he's a Marxist. He's not. The guy.
I know he's not a Marxist.
So
I don't
anyway,
think that needed. No, hang on. Before you tell me the point you wanted to make, we'll just do another minute on the point you have made, and I want to know what the difference is between doctors and lawyers having no choice in who they provide their professional services to.
In that respect, there's no difference whatsoever.
So
I'm
down
not
with doctors.
lawyers.
So you couldn't vote for a doctor then either.
Of course, yeah. I'm not. The reason I'm not voting for Keir Starmer is nothing to do with him being a lawyer. I made that point to correct the gentleman who was on previously. Yeah, he's not a Marxist. He's a solicitor.
He's not a solicitor. He's a barrister.
He's a barrister.
But that's got nothing to do. So that's got nothing to do with your vote.
No.
Okay, carry on.
So, the reason I'm the person you're looking for is because I'm none of the other previous people. What I am is, I'm a 61-year-old man who left school at 15 and I've worked ever since. I've been a police officer for many years. Before that, I was a soldier for many years. And I'm now 61 years of age, in a lay-by. I'm a HGV driver for a living. I have got 4 kids that I've brought up and they're all contributing, they're all working, they've all got careers. And I have worked very, very hard for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The reason I'm not voting Labour is, rightly or wrongly, it's how I feel. I was always a Labour voter. I'm a working class guy. The last Labour person I voted for was Tony Blair. And what a disaster he turned out to be, champagne socialist. So
what does that mean?
What it means is, back in the day, you would get politicians who had...
No, what does champagne socialist mean?
It means he thinks he's a socialist, but he's not. He's a Tory.
His whole thing was that he wasn't a socialist.
Well, he got the socialist ticket. It was socialists that were voting for him. But he was the last guy I voted for.
So you're a socialist?
I don't know. I'm not sure what I am. I'm not a Tory. I'm not a socialist.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a liberal. I don't know. But here's what I do know.
Yes.
I feel that I cannot trust Keir Starmer in government, and we're going to find out because he is going to be the next Prime Minister. I'll bet my left leg on it. And when he's in, I can't wait to see what he does. Okay. I've almost got this doomsday feeling.
But I want your enthusiasm for the Tories a bit more than I want your doomsday feeling.
I'm going to give it to you.
I certainly don't want your left leg. So the thing that makes you feel positive or...
Well, I haven't finished my negative point yet. The reason I think he's going to ruin the country is because he's going to give everything away, mostly in benefits. Nothing to do with immigration. That's a very, very small part of our benefit system. There's a lot of people coming to this country. If it weren't for the immigration system that we had in the 60s, this country wouldn't be half what it is.
I mean, they've tried really hard to address this point. I mean, really hard, to the point where they've alienated some people who probably would describe themselves as socialists. Most obviously, Liz Kendall, the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, talking about how under a Labour government, if you can work, there will be no option of a life on benefits. I think I've remembered that right from March of this year. That's passed you by, which is perfectly normal, Andrew.
That's passed me by because I've never heard that, and I listen to this stuff on the radio all day. Because
that's my bad then. I've let you down on that one. I probably thought that was too. I probably thought that was a bit too dull to cover. But the tough.
It's really important to people. It's really important to people like me. I just feel that there are a section of the population who are working and putting money in the pot, and there are a large section who don't work, who will never work again, and in some cases, and I know some of these people personally, have never worked. I don't know how they've got away with it. They never worked.
That's been true for 14 years of Tory government.
Yeah, it has.
So why is it Labour's fault?
And it's not Labour's fault.
So why do you think that keeping the current people in power... But I've just told you that they say they're not. I mean, hey, they could be lying, but I mean, you think that things... Keep the people in charge who've let your friends never work because the other people might do even more of the same thing? Is that it?
Part of that decision is based on the fact that... for two reasons. One, I haven't heard what you said.
No,
I've not
that's
heard
perfectly
that
reasonable. No, that's perfectly reasonable. But I mean, and to be fair, Andrew, they're hardly going to campaign on making it easier for people never to work, are they?
I understand that. Yeah. The Tories have said they're going to do something about it, and I know they've not done much for 14 years. However, I mean, they've both made similar noises really on this. Can I ask you a personal question? Of course you can.
What if you get sick, or one of your 4 kids gets sick? What kind of support do you want them to get from the state? If they can't work?
Oh, I see what you mean. Not medical assistance. I mean, what support? I want them to be supported. I want people to be supported. I've got a neighbour right now.
But you don't, because, I mean, you think there's too much there already. Whereas most people living in the circumstances you describe, your friends who've never worked in their lives notwithstanding.
They're not my friends.
All right, your acquaintances that have never worked in their lives. It's unlikely statistically, unless they're breaking the law, that they live very comfortable existences. Most research would attest that the lot of an unemployed person in this country is one of the most ungenerous in the civilized world, certainly in Europe. But you've ended up thinking it's too generous.
What I think is that I don't think it's too generous. I think that
you do, Andrew.
You've got to let me finish, mate.
Well, no, I know, but I can't let you contradict yourself without pointing it out. You do think it's too generous. Because
I've never used the word generous. I think there are too many people on it who shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's not generosity.
But that's 14 years of Tory rule. What's that got to do with Keir Starmer? What's that got to do with Keir Starmer?
It's 14 years of Tory rule, plus whoever was in before them.
Yeah.
It's gone on for years. This has gone on for decades.
Yeah.
And
so why is it a Labour thing then?
I didn't say it was a Labour thing. What I'm saying
this is what the whole phone-in's about, Andrew. Why you're going to vote for the people who have presided over what you're describing, rather than the people who haven't.
Because I think the choice between Tory and Labour is, I think the Tories may do something about it. I half believe them, and Labour, I don't. I don't think they will.
And the question about
I trust Tories a little bit more.
What do you want to happen when you get sick, or when your children get sick, or when you go through a period of unemployment? How much?
I want to be supported. Be supported. Because I've put the money in, I've paid in all my life, and there's way too many people who never pay in and are taking out.
How do we find them, do you think?
Well, if the people, the working pensions people and the
what do you think they live on? Have you got any idea what they live on? The ones you know that have never worked in their lives. What's their sort of monthly income?
I've no idea, but I know that once you take
you must know. You must have some idea,
right? Job seekers allowance, I believe, is about £80 a week. It's not what they give; it's what they don't pay. They don't pay council tax. They don't pay rent. They don't pay, apart from the electricity.
They pay more rent than they did when the Tories got in.
Apart from their electricity and their food bills, and obviously now because they can't afford.
I think it's universal credit now, isn't it, rather than job seekers?
Universal credit. There you go.
No, job seekers is still a thing, I think. So 80 quid a week, is it?
I don't know. I think it is about that.
I think it's a bit higher if you're over 25. So what would you do on £90.50 a week?
I'd go out and get a job.
But you're currently on unemployment benefit.
Well, I wouldn't be. I'd be working.
Right. So everybody
Are you going to say if I was ill?
No, I'm saying that's it. So the £90.50 a week is still too generous, because obviously they need less. Because if it was less, they'd go. Well, what do you think they're doing then, Andrew?
It's not too generous.
But in what circumstances would that person go and get a job then? Because it must be too comfortable for them on £90 a week.
It's not just £90 a week, is it? I think you're being a bit naive, mate.
I'm not. I'm talking about what their outgoings are. We can talk about whatever housing benefit is called these days, or council tax relief, or all the rest of it. But you must feel that the reason why these people are not going out and getting a job is because they're choosing to live on the income they receive from the state. Right? We can agree about that. I'm not putting words. I'm not putting words in your mouth, which means it's too much.
No, I'm not saying it's too much. What I'm saying is it works for them, and the system that's employed, maybe they have got other incomes that they're not disclosing.
Well, that's breaking the law.
Right, okay.
And we started off by attacking lawyers.
Right, okay.
So who do you want to prosecute? Who do you want to prosecute the ones that are breaking the law?
Well, we could get the police to do it if they could find the backside with both hands, but we know that's not.
That's another 14 years of Tory rule, but more of the same, eh?
It's not though, is it? When I was a police officer, Mr. Blunkett was in charge, and he was about as much use
as a chocolate teapot.
Yeah, that will keep it clean. Chocolate teapot. Actually, on a motorbike.
I'll make you laugh, Kat, but before you go, shall I?
Yeah, go on.
So when you said that you'd bet your left leg on something, Karen texted. She said, "Bet both legs, you coward."
What's that about?
Oh, don't worry. I thought it was funny. It's 11:46. Ron's in Maidstone. Ron, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. I'm expecting a beating up because last time I came on, I was, and you've got more resources at your disposal. I have more knowledge and more speed of thought than I've got at my age. But
maybe I'm just right.
I mean, no, come on.
No, it's just whatever it is. Before the conversation has even started, you're saying I'm going to get beaten up, but it's not because you're right. It's because you've got superpowers.
Do you want to end it there?
You rang me. Just to be clear, I didn't ring you. You rang me. But anyway, so you've already waved the white flag. We should probably hear what you've got to say.
Thank you. Okay, what would you like to know from me?
Well, it's a phone-in, mate. I've been asking a question for 52 minutes.
Yeah, but I've not been listening for the whole thing. I've only tuned in the last 20 minutes. So I'd like to join in on that.
Oh,
so what specifically would you like to ask me?
What did you have for tea last night?
What did I what?
What did you have for tea
last night?
Yeah, what did you have for tea last night?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah.
God, it relies on the bit of... I can do it. I had a chicken Caesar salad.
That's nice. Croutons?
Croutons.
Do you make your own dressing?
I didn't. I went to a pub to get it.
Oh, very nice. What's your favourite biscuit?
Do you know what I really love?
No.
Those chocolate fingers, and you bite off both of the ends and suck tea through it.
Lovely. And why are you voting Tory?
Well, I've only just decided to. I have done most of my life, but I've challenged my opinions in recent times.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I'd listen to your programme sometimes, because I like to hear the things that you say. Okay. I prefer the things that you say because you have a depth of knowledge and you're very eloquent. Some of the people that phone in, no, it's not kind, it's accurate. Some of the people that phone in...
It's kind and accurate.
Okay, it can be both. I'm not very convinced by many of the people you phone in. I quite liked your last caller, and I think he's expressing himself very well.
I did as well.
Yeah.
It's always a shame when people blame those who've got less than them for their own sort of piece of the pie. But on we go.
Yeah,
what are your reasons?
I'm
getting
not
asked.
gonna do that.
Alistair says, please kick this time waster off. I think that's unfair. I was the time waster by asking you about biscuits and Caesar salads. But tell me what it is about the Conservatives that fills your heart with enthusiasm, political enthusiasm.
No, it's less that than it's the oppositions. I don't trust any of the oppositions in terms of their competence or their values. Or their leadership, or their... those things mainly.
You don't sound like someone who's been challenging their opinions and recently arriving at support for the Conservative Party. What are the values that Keir Starmer holds that you don't like?
Well, yeah, I think he sort of...
Values, remember? That's the word we're looking for.
Okay. Well, I think he's got... Okay, fine. I don't think necessarily his values are any worse than...
well, why do you bring him up then?
I apologise for that.
Okay.
I think. No, shut up. I think he sways according to. I think he's driven mainly by his. He wants to get into power.
Yes.
And he wants his party to get into power.
Remember,
and
enthusiasm.
Can I speak for a minute before you butting in?
No, Ron. This anger, mate. You've really got to sort it out. Okay,
no,
it's bad for you and it's bad for the people that you live with. Just get a grip and start being a little bit more polite and civilised. I'm conducting a phone-in which you have rung into. And the question that I'm asking is, why do you like the Tories? I don't want you to say things about Keir Starmer that you then have to abandon because you're devoid of evidence. I'm going to give you one more chance to conduct a civilised conversation among adults, and you're going to tell me what it is about Rishi Sunak's leadership of the Conservative Party that enthuses you.
That's the question, is it? Okay.
It's been a question since 11 o'clock this morning, champ.
I'm sorry I haven't listened to all your programme.
Yes, but now you know what the question is, and it's not fair on all the people waiting to speak that you continue to clog up my switchboard. So what is the enthusiasm, the basis for your enthusiasm towards Rishi Sunak?
It's not enthusiasm towards Rishi Sunak.
Well, that's the phone-in that we're having. Richard's in Newquay. What would you like to say?
Well, yes. I mean, I think that Rishi Sunak is probably hard done to.
Yes.
I don't actually think he's done anything wrong. He probably hasn't got the charisma and the ability to connect with the public when speaking that probably Keir Starmer has.
Really?
Yes.
Crikey.
I mean, Keir Starmer is a barrister.
I don't think he's very charismatic, though, is he?
Well, I wouldn't. Well, he can twist a conversation to get the outcome that he wants because he's good at doing that. Richie Sunak.
I'm sort of disagreeing with everybody, which was bound to happen this hour. I don't think he is very. I don't think he is very good at that, actually, Richard. But we all see what we see. We all see what we see.
But the point I'm trying to make is,
Yes.
I think Richie Sunak is a safe pair of hands. I mean, he did a good job as Chancellor. He got the country through COVID. Did a great job with the furlough scheme, and then the bounce back loans, which helped thousands and thousands of businesses.
He chose not to investigate all of the corruption, sort of billions of pounds worth of corruption. And what could they have done differently, do you think?
Well, there's huge amounts they could have done differently.
Like what? So what country would you point at as an example of getting it wrong?
Well, if you look at England, we have a population of 60 million.
No, I mean in terms of what we did during COVID, the countries that did something differently and got it wrong.
I mean, I don't think this is about COVID, but I actually think we did a great job.
You brought COVID up! You literally said he's a safe pair of hands, and then to give me the proof, the first thing you mentioned was COVID. He got us through COVID, you said. So I'm wondering, who are you comparing us to? Where is the country that didn't do what he did? Because it was bleeding obvious that they were going to have to do furlough.
We performed better than Wales, which has a population of 3 million, and Scotland, that has a population of 5 million.
Performed better by what? By what
Scotland.
metric? What metric did we perform better than Wales and Scotland?
By numbers of deaths per capita.
Right.
And also, we got back to work a lot quicker, which has improved our economy.
So people went back to work quicker in England than they did in Scotland?
Yeah, they did, because Scotland were pushing to have far more restrictions in place.
And that was a decision taken by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, was it?
I'm just trying to make the point how we got through COVID. But the real point that I'm trying to make is that we have to look at you are an economist, or you've got a background in
no, I don't. But never mind. You carry on.
Okay, fair enough. Well, when you look at the economy, we need. Our country is doing well. We are growing faster than the likes of Germany and Europe. We've come through COVID. Yeah. We've gone through Brexit. We are growing.
So we want more of the same.
Well, when you look at what we do, we're growing. We're far ahead of our peers. So if you look at Wales, Labour is run by Wales.
Yeah.
The NHS.
Well, Wales is run by Labour.
By Labour. The waiting lists in Wales are worse than England.
Yeah.
We have a population in England of 60 million.
You keep saying that. I don't know what point you think you're making on that. But anyway, I mean, Rishi
Sunak.
I'm
trying to make is why would we trust Labour when they can't even run Wales?
Keir Starmer's not running Wales.
Labour are running Wales. It's the same people.
Well,
it's the same firm.
Boris Johnson was running England not long ago. Are you a fan of his?
Well, yeah, he's done a good job.
Boris Johnson.
When you look at the economy, we are growing ahead of where we should be. The NHS in England is better than Scotland and Wales. Okay. Education is outperforming Scotland and Wales.
Have you heard of Goldman Sachs?
Yes.
Have you heard of the International Monetary Fund?
Yes.
Have you heard of the Office of Budgetary Responsibility?
Yes.
Have you heard of the OECD?
Yeah, what's your point? I've heard all of those.
Where are you getting the idea that we are outperforming?
Well, have you heard of UBS? If you look at UBS, their forecast for the UK is that we are growing faster than what France and Germany are.
That growth depends on where you were when the measure started, where the metric started. So if you've fallen further than everybody else and you start coming back, then your growth will be higher than them. But what is you? No, tell me more about UBS. What is UBS?
Well, I haven't got it in front of me. Their figures.
No, but what is it? I'm not familiar with the acronym. I thought they did. Do you mean the investment bank, the American Investment Bank?
Yeah, they expect the UK to grow by 1.3%, and the Eurozone will be growing itself by 1.1%, while Germany is the laggard.
And that means you're going to vote Conservative?
Now, what I'm trying to say is we are doing well as a country.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
we are.
We are outperforming everybody. We're doing brilliantly.
Well, we are, but...
I know. I mean, it's just... I'm reading a story about British children being the shortest, fattest and sickest in developed countries, and I'm listening to someone tell me that everything's going brilliantly.
It's scary. People can make a story out of anything. When you look out there... if you look at it, inflation has come down. People's wages, wage inflation is outstripping inflation. Yeah. So that has been for the last 12, 18 months.
No, I kind of, sometimes, what's the word that I'm looking for? I think you should have been doing Rishi Sunak's interview this morning with Nick Ferrari on it, because the country you describe, he doesn't recognise.
Yeah, but that's because he's not out in the real world. I travel up and down the country, the motorways are heaving.
Yes, the motorways are heaving.
Yeah, people are going on holidays. The airports are full. People that are on unemployment are doing well.
Yeah.
There are plenty of jobs out there. If anybody needs more money, like the last caller said, they can go and get a job. I mean, when I was growing up, I used to go and get an evening job.
In St Albans at the moment, the average cost of a house is 17 times greater than the average yearly earnings of a person who lives there. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I'm not being funny, but I live in Cornwall and wages are high, but people are still able to...
I just asked you a question.
House prices are high.
17 times greater than the average earnings of someone who lives there. So for whom is this economy working, do you think?
About people buying the houses there.
For whom is this economy working?
For people that are working.
Okay. So 18, they're all working, and the house that or rather the average house in their area is 17, 18. I kind of want a little bit of whatever it is you're on, to be honest, because it's beyond glass half full, and I have in a way enjoyed talking to you, Richard. Thank you. Henry is in Stanton St John. Henry, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm not a fan of Rishi Sunak. I think he's been a disaster. His campaign's been dreadful, from the rain to all the cock-ups. But when he said the thing about national service, it was the one thing that I thought, actually, maybe that's a good idea. And I don't hate young people. I love young people. I've got one teenage daughter and one younger daughter. But I think they have been pampered. I pampered my children. And I think a year in the forces, it could do them all a world of good. Think about learning to cook, learning about engineering, learning to drive really well.
There's nothing stopping them from doing that already.
No, there isn't, but they're not going to do it. Why not force them to do it?
Because they don't want to. Well, why didn't you do it?
I did CCF at school.
So did I, mate. And we both know that's a completely ridiculous contribution to this conversation. I could probably identify a chipmunk aircraft from 20 yards away, but in terms of providing me with a backbone or all of the things that you're alluding to, maybe all schools are slightly different, but you're not having that, Henry, not in a million years. Why didn't you do all these things that you think your daughters should be forced to do?
But then if I'd been forced to do it and I'd done it, I maybe really appreciate it. I just think the young are quite pampered, and it might just get them out of that.
I hear this a lot. Well, actually, I don't hear it that much from people your age, because you've got teenagers in the category. But I hear it from people a lot older than you. I think it's absolute nonsense. I think they've got it harder today.
No, they've got it really hard in a way.
So let's make it harder.
No, I don't think that's making it harder.
Well, of course it is. You've just said we're going to force them to do things they don't want to do.
But once they do it, they might enjoy it.
Well, you might. So let's make it compulsory for 43-year-olds.
50-year-olds.
All right, sorry.
Fine, make it compulsory for me.
Well, now you're just being silly.
Can I just say one more thing?
So, you can, after I tell you what Alan has heard in the course of your conversation. He hears you saying, I haven't disciplined my children enough, so it's off to the front for them. He's right, though. That's what you sound like. You said, I've failed in parenting, so I'd like to hand them over to some retired regimental sergeant major who can shout at them for a year in the hope that they come back grateful.
My children are really well disciplined, but they I do too much for them.
Do less then, man. Stop waiting for the government to step in. This is such a bizarre... Go on, say the last thing you wanted to say.
The last thing I'd say, which is a little bit unrelated, but when a politician is asked a question like Keir Starmer of if he would have preferred Jeremy Corbyn to Boris Johnson, why doesn't he just say, yes, I would?
Well, he did eventually. Did
he?
Yeah.
I just wish they'd answer questions. It's so maddening.
He did.
Okay.
But anyway, that topic's in the second hour. I think that lack of discipline that you've displayed there, Henry, is grounds for you being sent off to a boot camp.
I'm going to go off and join the Navy,
Go for a boot camp yes, exactly. Send me a postcard. David's in Woodbridge. David, what would you like to say?
Yeah, you're asking the question, why are people possibly attracted by Farage?
Oh, fascists. Why are fascists attracted by
fascists. Yeah. Okay. Now, the thing is, I'm not a fascist. I've never voted Conservative in my life. A lot of Labour. But what I've seen from Farage in the last few weeks, few months, and I wasn't a Brexiteer, is that he asks certain questions that the mainstream is not doing. And you alluded to the guy from Clapton saying there is a duopoly going on. And
Ed Davey says that.
Yeah, and there's a Reform Party there is prepared to ask questions that aren't being asked. Now,
like what?
I know he got hammered last week when he suggested that the Ukraine war could have been provoked, and it's a bit wider than just Putin being an absolute idiot.
No, he said that Putin had been provoked into invading the sovereign territory of Ukraine by the expansion of the European Union and NATO, which is not only disgusting, it's also blatantly wrong.
Well, there's a debate there to be
No,
had.
there isn't.
Okay.
The EU doesn't expand. Sovereign countries vote to join it, just like sovereign countries vote to leave it, which he spent his entire life campaigning for, the right of a sovereign country to vote to leave the European Union. How can he have a problem with countries voting over their future relationship with the European Union when his entire life is built on it?
True, I grant that. But
so let's try another example then of the things he says that are attractive, because that one hasn't worked, has it?
Okay, when we think about fascism, we relate it back to...
No, we're talking about what's attracted you to him, David.
Yeah, well, I'm just coming to that.
Oh, good.
If it's okay, James. When it comes to fascism, we relate it back to the crimes against Jewish people in Nazi Germany. That is a classic encapsulation of fascism in our memories. Now, fascism today is going on with Keir Starmer and Sunak in supporting the invasion of Israel. Now, someone like Farage would be prepared...
Who's invaded Israel?
Invading Gaza, apologise.
Right.
And Starmer...
So you think Farage is against Israeli actions in Gaza?
Those actions.
Have you got any proof of that?
Yeah, I've heard him speak and saying, should we really be in those parts of the world supporting it?
You've heard Farage question Israelis' response to the October the 7th terror attack?
Yes.
We both know you haven't.
But...
let's just be clear that you haven't, shall we? Because otherwise we're in sort of slightly choppy waters.
Okay, but
So what you said about Ukraine was complete rollicks, and what you've said about Israel...
No, it wasn't, because you didn't let me debate that about Ukraine. You just said it was right...
the EU can't expand. Countries can vote to join it.
Just getting back to your...
No, let's get back to Nigel Farage's comments about Israel. Can we agree he never said the things you just said he said?
Okay.
So let's move on to your third point.
Okay, well, my point is that you're asking the question, why are people...
Fascists.
Why? I'm not a fascist.
You've said that a few times. But what's your third point of attraction?
That's my point. I'm not a fascist.
Well, very few. I mean, the whole point of this phone is that no fascist ever says they are a fascist. But what do you think attracts fascists to Nigel Farage?
The big immigration talk,
right.
The use of the language, invasion, speed, we're being taken over, and all that kind of stuff. And that is a tactic that he'll use. And you said it at the beginning. He's very good at this kind of work. Probably far better at doing this than he was as a stockbroker. But he can communicate very well with the British public on those things.
No, I mean, not the British public. You're looking at best between 15 and 20% of the British public, which you could loosely describe as the racists or the fascists.
Yeah, and that could...
But David Cameron used the word swarm. I mean, they all use the word invasion. Even some Labour politicians have flirted with that kind of rhetoric. So what is it about... Do you think the difference is that when Farage talks like that, they think he really means it? He hates the foreigners as much as they do.
Is it about hating? Or
yes, it is.
Is it? So you'd say 15-20% of the British public are fascist?
I'd say that they have fascist sympathies, fascist tendencies. Yeah, I think every population has that.
Well,
otherwise they'd never win, would they? They'd never take over anyway.
We're actually activating fascism today in Israel with our government supporting the Israeli response to Gaza.
I mean, you're jumping around quite a lot. We've already established that Farage hasn't said anything like what you claimed that he said, and you're comparing the Israeli government to the Nazis now.
Well, they're being taken to the court of international justice.
No, just to be clear, that's what you're doing. You're comparing this. So you've come on to explain why people are attracted to Nigel Farage, and you've ended up comparing the Israeli government to Nazis.
Well, they're being taken to the court.
What else have you got? What else is in the diary for today?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm just wondering how you're going to top this. It's only 11 o'clock.
Well, wrong. I'm making a point.
Well, I mean, many people will tell you, I can't let that stand. You can't compare Israel to the Nazis, even if you think that it's true. I have no choice but to dismiss that as a disgusting comparison. You could use the word ethnic cleansing. You could even remind us of the genocide investigations being undertaken in the international court. But to compare Israel to the Nazis, and final question, actually...
No, am I allowed to speak?
Yeah, well, of course you are, but only in answer to the questions that I ask. What's this got to do... What's your belief that Israel are like the Nazis got to do with Nigel Farage?
What? Right, so you're asking me a question. You're asking me to think on my feet.
Well,
What's it got to do with
we all
Nigel?
have to do that. Yeah. You brought it up. The phone-in is about Nigel Farage. You've compared Israel to Nazis. Okay. I'm just wondering what they've got to do with each other.
Okay, and as a wider way of looking at it, it's okay to call Farage a fascist.
Yes.
And his followers a fascist. My point is Sunak and Starmer are no... In fact, they're actually worse, because they're activating and supporting the genocide by not opposing it. And the best person to vote for... Well,
they are opposed. They are. I mean, Starmer is opposing it. But the point is that because of Gaza...
He did not call for a ceasefire. You know that.
Well, he has called for a ceasefire.
He didn't straight after the 9th of October.
Because he didn't think there should be a ceasefire. He thought Israel had a right to respond. It's the 7th of October.
He supported it. Now he's saying we should stop it.
Because they responded and he decided that they'd gone too far, just as Rishi Sunak did. But I still don't understand why we're talking about this in a phone-in about Nigel Farage. You're saying that because of...
You can get angry with me, James.
I'm not angry. I'm profoundly amused. Why are we talking about this in the conversation about Nigel Farage?
You can call Farage a fascist, but... Look at Sunak.
I didn't actually call him a fascist. I asked what attracts him to. What is it that attracts fascists to him?
Fascism in Israel.
But what's that got to do with Nigel Farage?
Well, this is a wider discussion. We're in an election period, and we're trying to work out what's right and what's wrong. You can sit on your chair calling him a fascist, but why don't you point the finger at other people as well? I will never vote for Farage. I will never vote Reform. But he does ask questions.
What questions? What questions? Apart from the question about Ukraine that we've established was wrong.
No, you've established.
No, you've established it was wrong. You cannot expand the EU. You can simply vote. Okay.
Gorbachev in 1989 with Thatcher and Reagan agreed on the wall coming down, provided that the NATO expansion didn't take place.
That's not actually what happened, and that's not what Farage was referring to. He was referring to the...
Get out your binary way of thinking.
Okay, I will.
And being prepared to be a bit more nuanced.
Okay, and before you go, what is it about Nigel Farage that attracts so many fascists?
What is it? Because he knows how to manipulate on the immigration thing. We think of fascism going along with race and genocide. Okay, when he starts to use that emotive language, people get drawn to it. And then you start using the English terminology of English values and all that kind of thing.
So why didn't we start with that? It would have been a much more friendly conversation.
I'm not here to make friends, James. I'm here to make a point of the hypocrisy that is going on in mainstream politics, and you're going along with it, James.
Because I'm not comparing Israel to the Nazis. Because I'm not comparing Israel to the Nazis, just to be clear.
But what Starmer and Sunak have done is fascist. They've supported Israel in a genocide.
And I still don't know what that's got to do with the phone-in about Nigel Farage, who has said none of the things about Israel that you claim that he has said. But at least we agree on the nature of manipulation.